Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something cozy, chilly and a little bit awful. You're not in your bed, you're not in your house. You're in a tiny attic in Victorian London, and outside the winter wind is howling like a pack of wolves. The sky's the colour of old dishwater, and the smell of chimney soot has already crept under the door. You're lying on a thin mattress stuffed with horsehair and straw, pressed up against a cracked wall. Your breath curls in front of your face. That's not poetic, it's actually frozen vapour, drifting upward and freezing on the inside of the window above you, lacing the glass with pale white feathers of ice. Your blanket barely covers your legs, your knees ache, and you haven't moved yet. You don't want to, because the second you lift the covers, the cold rushes in like a slap. You won't believe this, but people used to crack the ice in their morning wash basins indoors. They'd wake up, pour water from a jug and find it frozen solid. So no, your morning splash isn't happening. All right, before you get too cozy, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe, but only if your heart says yes. And hey, tell me where you're listening from. What time is it in your corner of the world? Dim the lights, get that fan going for some background vibes, and let's chill into tonight's little adventure. It begins with your toes. They're the first to betray you. Even under 2 layers of socks, darned by your grandmother and patched with string, they've gone stiff and cold. You curl them reflexively, but it's too late. The cold has already found them. The soles of your feet feel like blocks of stale cheese, and the chill works its way up. Ankles, knees, thighs. You try rubbing your legs with your hands, but even your fingers are too numb to help. You finally pull the blanket back. There's a puff of cold air and you gasp. A shiver zips through your ribs like something small and sharp just ran down your spine with a needle. Your breath hitches. You sit up, but slowly, because if you do it too fast, the dizziness kicks in. That's the other thing. You haven't had breakfast yet, and your belly knows it. Your little attic is built just under the slant of a roof, and the wind above your head makes a low, droning sound, like someone blowing across the mouth of a bottle. The walls are warped, and the floorboards don't quite fit together. There's a draft somewhere behind you, one you've never been able to block, not even with that rolled-up sack full of sawdust. The cold gets in anyway. You could swear it's alive. You shuffle toward the basin. The water's solid. You knock your knuckles against it. Hollow thud. No splash. You glance at the cracked mirror nailed to the wall. Your hair is flat on one side, puffed out on the other, and your face looks like it belongs to a ghost. Eyes ringed, lips faintly purple, skin a dull, sallow yellow from the coal smoke. You try to wash. Anyway, you dip the cloth into the ice water, force it against your cheek and flinch. It stings so bad you almost cry. It's like rubbing yourself with winter itself. You dress quickly as best you can. First comes the underlayer. Flannel, itchy, but necessary. Then stockings. 2 pairs if you have them. You step into your trousers, or petticoat depending on who you are, and try to avoid stepping on the ice-rimmed floorboards. They crack when your heels hit them. Then your blouse or shirt, then the coat too thin to matter much, a scarf you knitted yourself. Your boots, stiff with moisture from yesterday's snow, take forever to slide on. You tug open the attic door, and a breath of air hits your face like a slap. You make your way down the steep steps past the others still asleep in lower rooms, ducking past a bucket on the landing, overflow from last night's leak, now a solid block of ice. That's not the worst of it. Downstairs in the common kitchen, the ashes from the fire have long gone cold. You poke them, but they don't move. The fire's out. It always goes out. Coal costs money. You reach for the newspaper someone used to wrap their supper. Not to read, to shove under your clothes. People do that here. Layers of crumpled paper between shirt and skin. Anything to block the wind. It works surprisingly well. One of Queen Victoria's guardsmen once stuffed 5 layers of the Times under his uniform to survive his morning post. You light a candle stub. It flickers against the damp walls. Your fingers are already going stiff again, and you haven't even opened the door. Outside waits the true test. But first, you need to dig into that crust of stale bread tucked into the cupboard. You bite it, and it's hard as stone. You chew anyway, because that's the only breakfast you're getting today. And tomorrow's forecast. Colder still. You step outside. The cold doesn't hit you. That would suggest impact, a blow you can brace for. No, this seeps. It seeps into your collar, under your sleeves, down the backs of your knees, and behind your ears. It doesn't matter how tightly you wrap the scarf, it finds the gaps. It always finds the gaps. Your boots crunch onto the snow-slick cobbles. It rained last night. Then it froze. So what's underfoot now is a treacherous mix of slush, ice, and whatever the horses left behind before the frost set in. You step carefully. Everyone does. You watch as a gentleman, dressed in a long frock coat and top hat, slips near the curb and narrowly avoids breaking his tailbone. He doesn't curse. That would be undignified. He just stares down at the pavement like it betrayed him, then carries on, hobbling. The city is grey. Not just from clouds, from coal. You see it in the air itself. It hangs low and grimy, wrapping the rooftops in a greasy veil. The smell is acrid, like burnt toast and metal, and it clings to your tongue. You can taste it when you breathe. You pass chimney sweeps, already at work, their faces blackened with soot. One of them gives you a grin. What few teeth he has left show stark against the grime. He's a boy, maybe 11, maybe younger. He's already halfway up a ladder, dragging a long rod behind him. You glance down an alley and see wash hung between buildings, stiff as boards. Sheets don't dry in this weather. They freeze mid-flap and stay like that, frozen like stage curtains in a play no one wants to watch. But you've got things to do. Errands, maybe. Or work. Or just the daily fight for warmth. You stop at a stall. The vendor is hunched over a brazier, trying to warm his hands over a few lumps of glowing coal. He's selling roasted chestnuts. They smell warm, sweet, smoky. You haven't had one in weeks. You consider buying a handful. Then you remember. You need to save those pennies for fuel. Food can wait. As you turn away, a gust of wind picks up. Not strong, but sly. It winds around your ankles and slips up your back, and you shudder. A woman walking beside you lets out a cough, a deep, wet sound from the bottom of her lungs. She doesn't cover her mouth. Her hands are buried too deep in her sleeves. That sound follows you. Everyone's coughing these days. You glance down at your gloves. They're mismatched. One has a hole at the thumb. You shove your hands into your coat instead. But the lining's gone threadbare. No help there. You pass a shop window. There's condensation on the inside of the glass, and you see oranges, real ones, a luxury, bright and glowing like they don't belong here. They almost look warm. You don't go in. Instead, you head back toward home, the wind tugging at your coat the whole way. You pass a woman shaking a rug from a window. You pass a dog curled on a stoop, its fur dusted with frost. You pass a constable stamping his feet at the corner, muttering to himself about chilblains. You think about your own toes. They've gone numb again. You don't know if that's good or bad. At least they're not hurting. A man with frost in his beard bumps your shoulder. He doesn't apologize. He's staring straight ahead, jaw clenched, moving like someone chasing a ghost. You don't blame him. This is just the beginning of winter. January's barely started. February will be worse. You'll need more paper, more socks, maybe a miracle. As you climb the stairs to your attic again, you notice that the water in the bucket on the landing is now not just frozen, but cracked. The ice has expanded and split the sides of the pail. It leaks slowly, a pale ring growing on the wood. You crawl back under your blanket. You don't even try to undress. You just curl around your own arms, breathing slowly, watching your breath drift into the air again. Somehow you sleep. somehow you'll wake up tomorrow and do it all over again. Because that's what winter in Victorian London does. It keeps you moving, not with hope, but because stopping means freezing. And no one wants to be found frozen, mouth open, clutching a crust of bread. Not yet. You wake to a faint scraping sound downstairs, someone stirring the ashes. It's still dark out, the kind of pitchy, bluish dark that says dawn is at least an hour away. But the cold has already wrapped around your ribs like a clamp. Your joints ache like you've been working all night. You haven't. You were asleep. That's just what cold sleep feels like. Someone coughs below. The same deep rattle you heard on the street yesterday. It's become a soundtrack. You lie still, listening, waiting to hear the next sound. There it is. The coal scuttle being dragged out from under the stairs. It's mostly empty. You already know that because you checked yesterday. But someone's hoping there's still a few crumbs left clinging to the corners. You pull your coat on over your nightclothes and tiptoe down, following the shuffling footsteps. The hallway smells of damp wood and something acidic. Maybe vinegar, maybe mould. In the kitchen, your neighbour is bent over the grate, poking yesterday's ashes like they might come back to life. A pot of water sits on the edge of the hearth. It's not boiling. It's not even warm. He sighs and sits back, defeated. You check the coal bin. A single lump remains, the size of your fist. You both stare at it. You don't burn coal lightly. Coal costs money. A shilling's worth might warm the room for a day if you're careful, but most families stretch it for a week, burning just enough to take the edge off. You learn to be selective with your suffering. Heat the kitchen, not the bedrooms. Warm water for washing, but not for bathing. Cook in batches. Reheat nothing. This one lump, it's a gift. A small, dirty treasure. You break it in half. That's the thing about coal. It's hard and brittle, but with the right knock, it splits. You place your half gently into the fireplace and strike a match. The flame flickers. It hesitates. Then it dies. Not dry enough. Or too little paper beneath it. Maybe both. You try again, tearing a corner from the newspaper lining your shoes. This time it catches, and the coal glows faintly. Not red, not yet, but it promises to be. You and your neighbour sit close, knees nearly touching, faces tilted toward the fragile heat, like sunflowers to the sun. You don't speak. That would be wasteful. You just watch. Here's the truth they don't teach in history books. Victorian coal was filthy. It wasn't the sleek, polished lumps you see in storybooks. It came in sacks, wet, dusty, and full of sulphur. Touch it and your fingers turned black. Breathe it, and your lungs never quite recovered. The poorer you were, the worse your coal. Cheap stuff left walls stained yellow, coated kettles in soot, and made your tea taste like burnt eggs. You stir the pot on the grate. The water begins to shiver. Not boil, but shiver, like it's just as cold and miserable as you are. Your neighbour pulls out a hunk of bread. He tears it in two and hands you the larger piece. No butter, of course. Just bread. It's rough, dry, and still carries the faint scent of last night's onions. But it's warm, if only because your hand is. You chew in silence. The coal snaps once. A spark flits out, dances on the stone hearth, then dies. You both lean in closer, eyes half closed, pretending the heat is spreading to your feet. The room begins to fill with smoke, not enough to cough, but enough to make your eyes sting. The flue's half blocked again. You'll have to clear it eventually, but not today. You glance at the corner where the walls meet. Damp streaks trail downward like teardrops. A strip of peeling wallpaper curls toward the hearth, catching the warmth like a child reaching for a blanket. Outside, the streets are still quiet, but you know it won't last. Soon the city will creak awake. Chimneys roaring, boots stamping, carts rattling, horses snorting. and behind every door someone else will be lighting their first fire, or trying to. There are rumours of shortages this year, rumours of price hikes. Some say the rail line is delayed by snow, and the coal yards near the docks are frozen shut. People whisper about the rich stockpiling sacks, buying by the ton while the poor line up for scraps. You once saw a fight break out in front of a coal vendor's cart. 2 women, one with a baby strapped to her chest. The other had a sack already, but tried to take more. It ended with a broken nose and the cart overturned. The coal spilled into the mud and froze there, half sunk, unreachable. No one helped. They just stared. And then, slowly, they began to dig. The image of those women scrambling through the frozen coal slop stays with you as you rise from the hearth. Your face is warm now, cheeks flushed from the fire, but your toes are still numb and your fingers throb with the dull ache that comes just before feeling returns. That's the cruel trick of it. Warmth hurts before it heals. You head outside with the empty coal scuttle tucked under your arm. The streets are louder now. Horses clip-clop by, steam rising from their nostrils like little factory stacks. The air's heavier too, thicker. You cough once. It's involuntary, like a tickle you can't scratch. Down by the corner is a small coal merchant stall, really just a cart with bags stacked high, each one sagging with black dust. A man with a wax moustache and leather gloves stands guard over it like it's a bank vault. You wait in the queue, 6 others ahead of you, all tight-lipped, all holding sacks, baskets or boxes. When it's your turn, he barely looks at you. "How much?" he grunts. You hold out a coin, a penny, rubbed smooth from years in your pocket. He scoffs. That gets you sweepings. He means the dust, the black grit at the bottom of the sack. It won't burn well, it'll sputter and spit and stain everything it touches, but you nod anyway. He shovels a small heap into your scuttle, like it's pig feed. You lug it home, your arm aching. Every bump in the road sends a puff of black dust into the air, coating your clothes. A woman in a bonnet glares at you when the wind shifts and a swirl of soot lands on her shawl. You mouth an apology, but she's already turned away. Back home, you kneel by the hearth again. The fire's long gone cold. You sprinkle a handful of coal dust into the grate and try to coax it alive with a match. It fizzles, smokes, but doesn't catch. The dust isn't meant to burn, it's meant to mock. You think of those who can afford proper coal. Welsh anthracite, clean and hot. The kind that crackles sharp and gives off that golden orange glow. That's what the bankers burn, the merchants, maybe the mayor. They sit in plush parlours while their fires roar and servants bring them tea. You cough again, more from the thought than the smoke. Still, you try again. A twist of paper, a sliver of dry wood, another match. This time it flickers long enough for the coal to smoulder. Not flame, but smoke. A thin blue coil. You shield it with your hands like it's a baby bird. Eventually it holds. Later that day you walk past the back alley behind the bakery. You see 2 boys, thin, ragged, elbows like knots, sifting through an old sack of clinkers. Spent coal. The kind that's already been burned once and discarded. They scrape at it with spoons, hoping for solid chunks that didn't catch. You pause, then reach into your coat and offer them your last heel of bread. They look at it, then at you, then take it with quiet nods. They don't say thank you. They don't have to. You know what it's like to run out of fuel. By evening, your tiny fire is just embers, but it's enough to warm your soup. A few thin turnips float in murky broth, and you swear it tastes better than anything you've ever had. You cradle the bowl in your lap, letting the steam fog your lashes. Later still, you lie in bed, the room faintly warmer than this morning, though your breath still shows. You think about coal, not as fuel, but as currency, as power, as the line between warmth and misery. There's a story you heard once, maybe true, maybe not, about a man who painted lumps of stone black and sold them as coal to desperate families. They didn't realise the trick until hours passed and nothing caught fire. By then it was too late. No refunds, no heat. You wonder if he slept warm that night. You wake up again. That might not sound like much, but in this weather, waking up is a minor triumph. Your blanket has slipped during the night, exposing part of your back to the air, and now your spine feels like it's been dunked in cold ink. You shiver hard, a full-body twitch that makes your teeth clack. It's lighter now. Thin daylight bleeding through the frosted window pane, the kind that never turns golden, only goes from grey to a paler, hungrier grey. You lift your hand to touch the glass. It's crusted. Not on the outside, on the inside. The moisture from your own breath has frozen into a delicate net of ice ferns, curling like lace against the surface. You trace a finger through it, and the pattern melts into a smear. Your fingertip burns with cold. This is the third morning in a row that your water jug has frozen solid. You consider breaking it, just hurling the ceramic thing against the floor so it shatters and frees the useless block inside. But you can't afford another jug, so you leave it and pull your coat tighter. You shuffle toward the window and press your forehead against it, just for a moment. It's like pressing against a tombstone. The street below is already busy. You see a milk cart rattling past, the horse's hooves slipping slightly as it tries to keep balance. The driver wears fingerless gloves and has his hat pulled down over his ears. His moustache is frozen stiff, glittering with little flecks of frost. You go downstairs and see the bucket on the landing is split completely now. A perfect vertical crack runs from rim to base. The ice inside has expanded overnight and broken it clean. This isn't rare. It happens all the time. London houses, especially the cheap ones, were not built for this level of cold. The insulation is a joke. Thin lath, cracked plaster, and gaps that let the wind run free from room to room. Some say the wind has a name. You believe it. Downstairs, someone is already boiling water in a dented kettle, trying to thaw the clothesline. Yesterday's shirts are stiff, frozen in mid-sway. They look like ghosts trying to dance. You pull on your gloves and go outside. You've got laundry to do somehow. Or maybe you're heading to the workhouse washroom if they let you. There's a rumour that someone froze there last week, passed out after scrubbing floors, and no one noticed until her rag stuck to her hand. You pass by a row of houses where icicles cling like fangs along every gutter. One snaps and crashes to the pavement beside you. Sharp as a dagger, long as your forearm, you jump back just in time. Across the street, a child is licking a frozen rail. You want to yell at him, but before you can, his mother appears and yanks him away. There's a faint ripping sound as his tongue lets go. He wails. She shushes him, rubbing his mouth with the edge of her shawl. She's not angry, just tired. She's done this before. You know this feeling. Everything is sharp in winter. The air, the ice, the silence. Your boots are already soaked. The soles are splitting. You can feel the water squelching with every step. And the worst part, it's not even snowing anymore. It's just cold, deep cold, the kind that makes you forget what warmth ever felt like. You start to imagine things, like steam rising from your own skin if someone dropped you into a hot bath. But you haven't had a bath in days. The frost creeps into everything. There are cracks in the water pump outside the bakery now. The baker is cursing under his breath while trying to thaw it with a kettle full of tea, his only hot liquid. He waves at you when he sees you looking and calls out, "Don't slip." You nod, but too late. Your heel catches on a patch of ice, and suddenly the world tilts. You stumble forward, arms flailing. Your basket of laundry tips, and a shirt falls into a slush puddle. instantly soaking up the dirty water like a sponge. You stand there for a second, heart pounding, half mortified, half furious. The baker says nothing, just watches you quietly as if to say, "That's winter," and it is. You wring out the shirt with numb fingers, but the slush clings. It's brown and gritty, laced with ash and something worse, maybe horse urine, maybe the residue of weeks-old street filth. Victorian snow, you're realizing, isn't white. It's grey before it even hits the ground. You drape the shirt over your arm and keep walking. Every step makes your socks wetter. The wool rubs against your ankles like sandpaper. You glance down and notice your laces are beginning to fray. Just what you need, one more thing unravelling. You duck into a narrow alley to escape the wind. It cuts between buildings like a knife, whistling through tiny cracks in the bricks. A tangle of laundry lines overhead clinks with frozen clothespins. Bits of ice fall like tiny glass shards. Somewhere nearby a cat yowls, then goes quiet. Even the animals have lost their voices to the cold. You reach the wash house at last. The line is already long. Women huddle near the entrance, steam rising faintly from their mouths as they whisper complaints. Someone stamps her feet, trying to keep blood flowing. Another adjusts a bundle under her coat. A baby, maybe, or just cloth wrapped around her middle to fake a fuller figure and earn sympathy. You wait, and wait, and wait. By the time it's your turn, the air inside the washroom is thick with humidity and coal smoke. It's warmer, yes, but not comfortably so. It's the kind of heat that sticks to your face and makes your clothes feel damp before you even start. You drag your basket to one of the sinks, dip your hands into the soapy water, and flinch. Even here, even now, it's still cold. Just cold enough to hurt, not cold enough to freeze, which somehow is worse. You scrub. The shirt from the slush puddle is a lost cause, but you try anyway. You beat it against the side of the basin, and a spray of dirty water hits your cheek. You don't bother wiping it. You're already soaked. Your fingers redden, then they go white, then they ache so badly you want to cry. You glance around and see the same face on every woman here, lips pursed, brows tight, shoulders high and tense. No one speaks. No one dares. There's no energy for small talk in this weather. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the metal tap, distorted, warped. Your nose is pink, your cheeks blotchy. You look older than you did a week ago. A month in this winter can take years off your face. At the far end of the room, a woman starts shouting. Her hands are frozen around a washboard, too cramped to let go. Two others rush to her side, trying to ease her fingers open. She weeps, quietly, not with drama, just a soft, choked sound of pain that bubbles up and disappears into the steam. The attendant at the fire says nothing, just keeps poking at the brazier. You rinse your last piece of clothing and squeeze it out. It drips onto your skirt. You hang it with the others on a rack near the furnace, though you know they won't dry completely. Not here, not today. You step back out into the air, and it hits you like a betrayal. The heat from the washroom was meagre, but it was something, and now it's gone. You hunch forward, arms wrapped around your ribs, and shuffle home with a wet bundle clinging to your chest. On the way, you pass a man scraping ice from his steps with a broken shovel. It's barely working, more slush than shovel, but he keeps at it. "Don't want another fall," he mutters, "not like last year." You don't ask what happened last year. You don't want to know. Back home, you hang the clothes near the fireplace, which is no longer lit. Just a few black crumbs in the grate, too scattered to catch. You lie down, still damp, still chilled, and above your head, a single drop of melted frost falls from the ceiling beam and lands right on your forehead. You close your eyes. You don't even flinch this time. It's laundry day again. Or maybe it isn't. Honestly, you've lost track. In the winter, time stretches like taffy, slow, sticky, and strangely blank. The light never changes, the cold never lifts, and your body begins to live in cycles of thaw, freeze, ache, repeat. Today's priority is clothes, not washing them, wearing them. You start with your base layers, woolen stockings you darned 3 times already. The left one has a hole near the ankle, which you cleverly rotate to the inside so it doesn't show. Over that goes a linen shift, stiff from drying by the fire too many times, the collar permanently scorched on one side, then a petticoat, then a second, then a blouse, then a bodice, then a skirt, then a shawl, then your coat. That's 10 layers, not counting under things. And still, somehow, you're cold. You wrap your scarf 3 times around your neck and tuck the ends into your coat, but the chill slides down your collar anyway, like a thief who knows the hidden latch. You pull on gloves. They're more holes than wool now. The fingertips are gone, which is actually useful for sewing, but dreadful for survival. As you move about the room, you hear the faint rustle of newsprint. Yes, today's secret weapon is paper, yesterday's newspaper, rolled and stuffed inside your blouse, between layers. It crinkles with every step like autumn leaves, but it works. It holds in heat better than a silk chemise ever could. A surprising number of people do this. Even Queen Victoria's own footmen were rumoured to stuff their breeches with the Times during long parades. But don't let the layers fool you. Dressing for winter in Victorian London isn't about style. It's a form of armour. You aren't putting on clothes. You're putting on defence mechanisms. Outside, you see a group of factory girls huddled at the corner. Each one is a patchwork of cloth and borrowed colour. Shawls pinned in place with bits of string. Coats with sleeves from 3 different donors. One girl wears a bonnet that clearly belonged to someone half her age. It sits high on her head like a teacup on a pumpkin. You join them because you're heading to the same place, the workshop, the laundry, the shop, wherever you're needed today. Everyone's moving stiffly like dolls in a forgotten attic. All this cloth, all this wrapping, and yet your limbs still sting. Your joints throb when you bend. You keep moving because stopping means frostbite. You know that now. One girl beside you sneezes, violently. It sends her off balance and nearly topples her into a snowbank. She laughs afterward, like it's the funniest thing in the world, but you notice her eyes are rimmed red and her nose is leaking. She's sick. Probably has been for a week. She's not staying home. No one can afford to. You pass a shop window with mannequins in corsets and winter capes. The mannequins have tiny waists, hourglass shapes, and smooth white porcelain skin that's never seen a coal fire. You tug your scarf tighter and look away. Clothing is a lie here. It doesn't make you beautiful. It makes you bearable. Without it, you'd freeze before midday. Your boots are stitched with waxed thread. They still leak. You know a trick, though. You line them with old rags dipped in beef tallow. Greasy? Yes. But it blocks the water, and you stopped caring about smells a long time ago. A woman on your street once lined her boots with strips of rabbit fur sewn from a stolen muff. She said it kept her warmer than love ever did. You believe her. The wind shifts, and your skirt whips sideways, almost tripping you. You hold it down with one gloved hand and keep walking. The others laugh, but gently. Everyone has had that moment. You round the corner and spot a man in a top hat leaning against a lamppost, looking far too composed for the weather. His coat is tailored, his gloves intact, and his boots look freshly polished. But as you pass him, you hear the faintest crunch. Newspaper, stuffed under that fine waistcoat. You smile to yourself. Even the posh ones play the same game. They just hide it better. You arrive at your place of work, a seamstress shop tucked between a tea merchant and a funeral director, and shake off the dusting of frost that's collected on your sleeves. It's not snowing, exactly. More like the air itself is flaking apart. Inside, it's not much warmer than the street. The fire in the back has long since dwindled to embers, and no one's dared to waste coal on a second spark. You rub your hands together, then flex your fingers to see which joints will obey you today. One knuckle pops with a painful crack. At least it moved. Around you, the others are already settling in. You all move the same way, like swaddled birds, wrapped in so many layers you can hardly bend. Sewing in this state is an art form. You have to pin with sleeves rolled back because the fabric of your coat is too thick for delicate work. But take it off, and you'll be shivering too hard to see straight. The paradox of winter clothing. Too little, and you freeze. Too much, and you can't function. You thread your needle and begin to work on a sleeve. A finely embroidered one destined for someone who will never, ever have to stuff a bonnet with paper to keep their ears warm. The thread slips between your fingers, but your numb thumbs fumble the knot. You try again, then again. On the third attempt you curse softly. The needle pricks your skin. A tiny bead of blood wells up. You suck it away and keep going. Around the room, the others are quiet, focused, or maybe just too cold to chat. One girl, maybe 16, leans close to her stitch work, her nose nearly touching the fabric. Her cheeks are pale, and her lips have that faint bluish tinge you've come to recognise. She's wearing mittens with the fingertips cut out. Probably her mother's, trimmed down to size. You remember a fringe tidbit from last winter that some seamstresses used to wear. Finger sleeves made from rabbit skin, not gloves. Just tiny fur tubes that slipped over the tips. Reusable, warm, and soft enough to allow embroidery. You've never had any, but you think about them often. The forewoman stomps into the room, breath puffing like a dragon. "No breaks until lunch," she snaps, then adds, "If you're cold, sew faster." No one responds. That would be pointless. You adjust your layers. The newspaper tucked inside your corset has slipped sideways, so now it's bunched against your ribs like a crumpled book page. You pull it back into place discreetly. The ink has left a faint grey smudge on your shift. Outside, a gust rattles the windows. A flurry of snow skitters across the panes like moths against a candle. Someone hums a tune under their breath, something from a music hall. A brave, bright little thing about love and lanterns. The contrast makes you laugh softly through your nose. Your hands ache, your toes are damp, but the stitchwork is coming along slowly. The garment you're making will probably be worn to a party with gas lamps and wine. Maybe someone will spill something on the cuff you hemmed, and it'll never be noticed. By the time noon comes, your back aches, your fingers sting, and the shawl you wrapped around your legs has slipped away. You stretch once, carefully, then get up to stand by the window. You breathe on the glass and write a letter in the fog with your finger. Just a silly one. Hello, or maybe a heart. It vanishes almost instantly. Then the bell rings. Time for lunch. You all shuffle toward the back room, shoulders hunched, clutching parcels wrapped in cloth. Bread, maybe cheese, maybe just something warm to hold for 5 minutes. There's talk of a new girl who fainted yesterday from the cold. No one knows her name. She didn't come back today. As you sip lukewarm tea from a cracked mug, you can still hear the crinkle of newspaper beneath your blouse. It rustles when you breathe. It's a strange comfort, that sound. Like a page turning, as if your life might someday be written down. You step back onto the street after lunch, bellies half full, hands still stiff from holding tea mugs like lifelines. The wind greets you immediately, rude, sharp, and with that familiar tang of coal smoke and horse. It's stronger now than it was this morning. curling around your legs and pushing against your chest as if trying to turn you back. But you don't go back. You have errands. You always do. You pull your coat tighter and begin to walk head down, boots tapping unevenly against the paving stones. The rhythm is broken. One sole has come loose again, and it flaps a little with each step. You'll try to patch it with twine later, or maybe nail it back on with one of the extra sewing pins if you're feeling desperate. The streets aren't snow-covered, not like in fairy tales. Victorian London doesn't get clean white snow. It gets sludge. Melted filth, blackened by soot and churned into something closer to stew than ice, clogs the gutters. It sucks at your boots and hides surprises underneath. Old rags, chicken bones, the occasional dead rat. You keep your eyes down, scanning for patches of ice. That's the real danger. It forms in the cracks where the morning's thawed slop refreezes by noon. The cobbles gleam in some places, beautiful, glassy, and you know from experience that's where the worst falls happen. You cross through a market lane, where vendors shout through scarves and steam rises from roasted chestnuts. Not enough to warm you, but enough to tease. One boy slips near a fruit cart and lands hard on his tailbone, letting out a squeal. His mother yanks him up by the collar and scolds him, more from fear than anger. You don't laugh. You've fallen too. Everyone has. You remember one winter when a man fell on Ludgate Hill, right in front of a carriage. The driver swerved, but the wheel caught the man's leg. It shattered like kindling. They say he was carried off to St. Bart's, but everyone knew what that meant. Infection, amputation, and maybe, if he was lucky, life as a beggar with one good arm. That's what the ice does. It doesn't just hurt you, it changes you. You pass a constable who's stamping his feet and blowing on his hands. He nods to you, and you nod back. His moustache is rimmed with frost, and there's a red patch creeping up the side of his nose. He's got mittens made from a boiled wool blanket, cut and stitched at home, no doubt. No one escapes the cold. They just disguise it. A few steps later, your heel catches on a loose stone, and your arms fly out instinctively. You regain your balance, barely, but the jolt shoots up your spine and rattles your teeth. You pause, heart pounding, then glance around. No one noticed. You keep walking. A fishmonger on the corner throws a bucket of brine into the street. It splashes against the curb and a spray hits your skirt. The water's still warm, but it'll freeze soon. You don't complain. It's not worth it. You just lift your hem and keep going. You see a man with a wooden leg hobbling ahead of you. He taps the ground before each step like he's probing for danger. Maybe he lost it to the war, maybe to a street fall. You don't ask. You just mirror his caution, and then, just when you think the path ahead looks clear, you hit it. A patch of black ice, smooth and perfectly blended with the stone. Your foot skids forward. You gasp. You twist your torso, trying to catch your balance, arms windmilling. And then, somehow, miraculously, you stay upright. You don't move, not for a few seconds. You just stand there, one foot planted, one foot hovering over the enemy, and your breath clouding in front of your face like smoke. You made it. This time, you press your hand to your chest, feel your heart pounding like a war drum beneath all the layers. That was close. One wrong angle and you might have cracked a rib. Or worse, broken a wrist, which is as good as losing a month's work. Maybe more. You take a slow step forward, testing the cobbles like you're walking on glass. Which, in a way, you are. The frost has made everything into a trap. What looked safe from a distance turns out to be pure hazard up close. Across the street you see a pair of delivery boys hauling a cart. There may be 12 or 13, red-faced and wheezing, their boots soaked to the ankles. The smaller one slips, nearly tipping the whole cart sideways. The older boy growls something, catches the handle just in time and smacks the other one on the ear, not from cruelty but panic. He's seen what happens when cargo is lost in this weather. A broken crate of glass or even a bruised apple shipment could cost them both a week's wages. You turn down a narrower lane, ducking between tall buildings where the sun never quite reaches. Here, the ice doesn't melt. Not for weeks. The cold hangs between the walls like a permanent ghost. You hear your footsteps echo as you walk, crunch, crunch, squelch, crunch, and then suddenly silence. You've stepped onto a patch of fully frozen stone, smooth as slate. For a second, it's almost beautiful. This secret alley, tucked away and silvered with frost like something from a fairy tale. Then a shape stirs ahead. It's a man, huddled beneath a threadbare coat back against the bricks. You see his breath rising in short bursts. His fingers are bare. He's not begging, just sitting. His eyes are half closed, and for one awful second, you wonder if he's still breathing. You edge closer. 1 step. 2. Then his head lolls, and he lets out a snore so wet and rattling it almost makes you smile. He's alive. Not well, but alive. You leave a crust of bread beside him and move on, quietly. You don't wake people in that condition unless you have to. The shock might kill them faster than the cold. Further on, you pass a delivery man curled up in his cart trying to sleep off the wind with sacks of flour for blankets. One sack has burst. Powdery dust covers his boots like snow. You doubt he even feels it. And now, as you near the main road again, the scene opens up. The full winter city. Horses dragging carts with steam rising from their flanks. Smoke pouring from every chimney. Coal wagons creaking down the street, leaving trails of black dust like breadcrumbs. People scurrying, heads down, collars up, skirts lifted from the slush. A man in a bowler hat shouts across the street. A woman slips and grabs a lamppost. A boy with no gloves hops from foot to foot beside a newspaper stand. It's as if the whole city is dancing, not for joy, but for survival. Every move, every step, every twitch of a shoulder or lift of a skirt is calculated to fend off the cold. You see a group of street sweepers scraping muck from the curb. Their brooms make a grating sound on the ice, and one of them is barefoot. Barefoot. His feet are wrapped in rags, but you can still see the bruised skin peeking through. You wonder how he hasn't fallen over yet. You know a story, hard to say if it's true, about a man who wore wooden soles in winter, nailed to the bottom of his shoes to stay above the slush. He made them himself, called them clompers. People laughed at first, then they copied him. The sound of those clompers hitting stone became a winter melody. You think about making a pair yourself. For now you keep walking, your steps slower, more measured. You've earned a little caution. The wind pushes against your back, and the street narrows again. Soon, the real fog will roll in, the kind that hides not just danger, but everything. But we'll get there. You've survived another walk through the frozen veins of the city, and your toes? Still attached. You feel it before you see it. The air thickens, not just with cold, but with something else. Something heavier, grittier, like the breath of the city has turned inward. It coats your throat, your eyelashes, even the creases in your gloves. It's not snow, it's not fog, not really. It's London fog, the kind only winter can summon, thick with coal smoke, industrial exhaust, chimney soot, and just enough moisture to glue it all together like tar in the air. The kind that creeps along the alleys like a living thing, swallowing shapes, faces, and sounds. One moment you're staring down the road at a man with a cane. The next, he's vanished. They call it a pea souper, and for good reason. The colour isn't white or grey. It's yellow, greenish sometimes, sickly, like old soup gone wrong. You step into it and the light disappears. Not dims, disappears. The sun becomes a dull blot overhead, a vague patch of brightness like a candle behind a curtain. And then the silence starts. Or rather, the muffling. Sounds don't stop. They change. Carriage wheels crunching snow now sound like brushes on velvet. People's voices are flattened, absorbed. Footsteps become whispers. You can hear your own breath echo in your ears. You reach out instinctively, trying to feel your way forward. Your fingers disappear 2 inches from your face. This isn't fog like you've known it. This is blindness. Moving fog. Fog that smells like sulphur and bitter tar and something else you can't quite name. Something sour and metallic like rainwater in a rusted bucket. You tie your scarf tighter around your face and blink back tears that form involuntarily. Everyone does it. The fog stings your eyes like pepper. Up ahead, you hear a shout, then the clatter of hooves. You press yourself flat against a wall just in time to avoid a hansom cab barrelling past, its driver barely visible behind the reins. He's navigating by memory, not sight. You think of the old joke. London cabbies don't need maps. They just follow the sound of gas lamps and prayer. You continue slowly, keeping one hand on the brick wall beside you. It's wet. Not with water, with soot, condensed from the air. If you pressed your cheek against it, you'd come away looking like a chimney sweep. A woman appears out of the fog, nearly walking into you. She startles, lets out a squeak and clutches her parcel tighter. You nod, but she's already vanished again. The street has turned into a corridor of shadows. Nothing stays visible for more than a few steps. There's a reason people carry lanterns in this weather. Some folks even wear little glass visors, like theatrical masks, to keep the soot out of their eyes. You saw one once on a banker, striding through the fog in polished boots and a soot guard tied to his top hat like a miner. It looked ridiculous. It also looked warm. You cough again. It rattles deep in your chest. The fog doesn't just sting. It settles. In your lungs. In your clothes. In your bones. You know it's dangerous. Everyone does. But no one talks about it as more than an inconvenience. You heard a story last week about a dock worker found slumped beside a crate. Mouth open, lips blackened. They say he didn't freeze to death. He suffocated. The fog filled his lungs like wet cement and stopped his breath mid-snore. You hope it's just a story, but it doesn't feel like one. You step carefully now, guided only by memory. Past the butcher, past the bookshop, past the baker's with its window darkened by soot from the inside. Then, like a miracle, you see it. A gas lamp, flickering in the gloom. Faint, orange, flickery. A dot of warmth in the swirling green-yellow. You reach it like a pilgrim reaches a shrine, and stand beneath it, gulping air like it's safer there. It isn't, but you pretend. The gas lamp flickers above you, casting a soft halo that barely pushes back the fog. But it's something. You stand there for a while, letting your eyes rest in the glow, pretending it's enough to warm your skin. It isn't, of course. If anything, it draws more attention to how cold everything is, how the fog steals heat like a thief in the night. You look around, not that there's much to see. The lamp reveals only a few feet of pavement in any direction, like a spotlight on a stage with all the other actors hidden in smoke. You feel like the last person alive in the world. Then, footsteps. Slow. Uneven. A figure emerges just barely from the wall of yellow haze. An older man wrapped in an oilskin coat, face wrapped so tight in scarves that only his eyes peek out. He gives you a nod, steps into your circle of light, and without a word lights his pipe from the gas jet itself. The flare makes both of you flinch. The glow briefly illuminates his face. Soot clings to the creases like war paint. He draws on the pipe, nods again, and vanishes back into the gloom. That's the rhythm of fog life. Appear, fade, repeat. You keep walking, eyes half shut against the sting. The soot clings to your lashes, your lips, your teeth. When you run your tongue along the roof of your mouth, it comes away gritty. You feel like you're breathing through a wool blanket soaked in vinegar. That's the coal. Always the coal. During the worst winters, Londoners burned almost anything to keep warm. Poor quality coal, tar bricks, even powdered dung. The result? Fog like this. A living smog, thick enough to blot out the sun at noon. There were days when city bells had to ring every hour so people could navigate by sound. You pass a doorway with someone crouched in the alcove, wrapped in a blanket that's barely more than a rug. Their face is covered, but the rise and fall of the fabric tells you they're still breathing. You think of waking them, telling them to get inside, to move. But where would they go? The fog doesn't care where you lie. It seeps in just the same. Further down the road, you hear coughing. Not one, voice. Many. A chorus. It's coming from a workhouse or maybe a schoolroom. You can't tell. The sound is muffled, but it carries. Wet, racking, persistent. Bronchitis, pneumonia, lung rot. Call it what you want. The fog finds its way into everyone eventually. You finally reach the turning for your street and grope your way along the familiar railings, fingers brushing cold iron. Each gate is a milestone. 1, 2, 3. The fourth has a missing post. You use it as your marker. Turn right. Your front steps are invisible until your toe hits the first one. You stumble, catch yourself on the wall, and fumble for the doorknob. It's icy, slick with frost and soot. You twist. Inside, it's barely better. The darkness follows you. You light a candle with trembling fingers, and the tiny flame dances with shadows as thick as the fog outside. You shut the door. The air is still smoky. The windows don't seal properly, so the smog creeps in through every crack. You could stuff them with rags, but the rags are wet from yesterday's fog. It's a losing game. You sit beside the hearth, though there's no fire, just memory. Your clothes smell like London's lungs, charred, sour, metallic. You pull off your gloves and stare at your fingers. The tips are grey, not from frostbite, from soot. You blink, and even that makes your eyes water. You're not crying, it's just the air. The morning after a thick fog feels like waking up from a fever. The air is clearer now, but not clean. There's a stale weight to it, like a room where too many people have been breathing too long. Outside, the streets glisten, but not with dew. That shine is the residue of soot settling during the night, smeared across every surface like the greasy fingerprint of winter itself. You step outside into this post-fog world, and it's almost worse than the storm. Everything's too quiet. Not the gentle quiet of snow. No, snow hushes the world with kindness. This silence is brittle, like the city's holding its breath. No birdsong, no clatter of hooves, just the distant groan of a cartwheel and the faint drip of melting frost from a rooftop above. You walk toward the Thames, though you're not sure why. Maybe because it's familiar. Maybe because it's the only place where the city feels open in winter. Less claustrophobic, less boxed in by the bricks and smoke. The alleys along the way are crusted with frost. Windows are rimmed in lacework ice, and doorsteps are slick. Someone's already fallen this morning. You can see the scuffed trail in the slush where a boot slid, followed by a crumpled smear where a knee must have hit. No blood, thankfully. Not this time. At the riverbank, the view opens wide, and it's strange. The Thames isn't flowing properly. It moves sluggishly like treacle, thick and black beneath a crust of forming ice. Large slabs drift by, solid, cracking sheets edged in white, nudging against each other with dull thuds. Fog lingers on the water, still clinging low like a drunk who refuses to leave the pub. You stand at the railing, looking down at this enormous, wheezing artery of the city. Sometimes, every few winters, It freezes. Not entirely. Not the whole width. But enough to worry the boatman. Enough that barge traffic halts. Enough that people start whispering about another frost fair. You've heard of them. Those bizarre, brilliant moments in London's past when the river froze solid, and they built entire festivals on its back. Market stalls, puppet shows, even ice bowling. They say someone roasted an ox on the Thames once, printed commemorative leaflets on the ice itself. But that was long ago. The river doesn't freeze like that anymore. Or so they say. Still. You see a few brave boys testing the edge near the shallows, tossing stones and watching them skid. One dares to step out. Just a foot. His friends shout. He laughs. You watch with bated breath, half terrified, half impressed. He jumps back before the ice can crack. Smart lad. You head toward the fishmonger's stall near the bridge, where the air smells less like salt and more like old rope and seaweed. His wares are half frozen, laid out on slabs of snow-packed wood. Cod, eels, something unrecognisable with its mouth still open in surprise. Careful walking home with those, he says, handing a wrapped parcel to a customer. Leave. I'm out too long and they'll turn to stone. He's not joking. You once saw a woman buy herring, forget it on her doorstep, and find it the next morning frozen to the wrapping paper, solid, unusable, destined for the fire instead of the pan. You pause to warm your hands near the fishmonger's brazier. He keeps it going with splinters of packing crates, and it smells like burning glue. But the heat is real, and your fingers uncurl a little. A man beside you says, "Thames'll freeze proper this year. You'll see." You glance sideways. His face is pockmarked and wind-chapped. He's got 3 scarves and no gloves. Like in 47, he adds. You don't remember 1847, but you nod anyway. Sometimes it's best to let the city's old ghosts talk. They've earned it. You leave the warmth of the brazier reluctantly, your fingers still buzzing from the rush of heat. As you step away, the cold reclaims your skin like it's been waiting all along. The Thames is still there, sluggish and black, slapping sheets of ice against the embankments with tired resignation. And the wind, it's stronger now. Not a gust, just steady, like breath on the back of your neck, constant and mean. You pull your scarf up higher and trudge along the river walk, watching as the fog pulls back just enough to reveal the hunched silhouettes of boats tethered and idle. Their sails are furled tight, and their decks are dusted with snow, abandoned like frozen ghosts. You wonder how many of the families that live aboard those boats are burning their own furniture for warmth this week. You've heard of it. First the firewood runs out, then the crates, then the shelves, then, when no one's watching, the chairs. One boy on a moored barge is tugging at a railing post with a crowbar. His father watches from a hatch with hollow eyes. He doesn't stop him. The wind carries the sharp scent of river mud and something fouler, sewage most likely. The Thames doesn't stop being a sewer just because it's cold. It just hides the smell better when it freezes. You step off the river path and into a narrow side street, hoping to cut through toward home. But the ground here is worse. Uneven stone pavers slick with refrozen slush. A pile of horse manure sits frozen in place like a grotesque sculpture, stiff and glittering with frost. You pass a woman sweeping her front steps. Not with much success. Her broom is stiff with ice and cracking in places. Still, she keeps at it, brushing half-heartedly at the crusted layer like she's hoping the motion alone will bring warmth. "Morning," she mutters, not looking up. You nod and keep walking. After a few steps you glance back and see she's stopped, just standing there, one hand still on the broom, the other pressed to her back. Her shoulders sag with the quiet weight of winter, that slow, creeping kind that isn't dramatic, but unrelenting. Further down, a man with a wheelbarrow full of coal scuttles by. The cart, squealing like it's in pain. You step aside to let him pass. His scarf falls as he hurries, and you see the red chapping along his throat, raw, flaking, exposed. He doesn't stop to fix it, just barrels forward like the cold is chasing him. You know the feeling. Near the corner, a rag-and-bone man rings his bell. "Old boots! Tin! Rags!" he calls, voice hoarse but still somehow cheerful. You almost smile. The way he trudges, wrapped in a patchwork of coats and scraps, makes him look like a walking cupboard. He nods as you pass. "Watch your step there, love," he warns. Too late. Your heel skids ever so slightly on a patch of invisible ice. You don't fall, but it's close. The jolt travels up your leg like lightning. You grit your teeth and keep walking. You reach your building, steps already slick again despite yesterday's salt. The bucket of ashes you scattered has done little. You pause to knock the snow from your soles and catch your breath. Then something strange. A bird call. A tiny sound, thin and uncertain, but real. A blackbird, perched on a crooked wire above the street, tail twitching in the wind. You stop and stare. The bird tilts its head, gives another tentative note, then hops sideways like it's unsure of its own optimism. It feels like defiance. You let the sound linger in your ears a moment longer before pushing open the door and stepping inside. The cold follows. It always does. The kitchen is dark, damp, and smells like coal dust and boiled cabbage. You hang your coat by the hearth, not because it's wet, but because that's where it might dry eventually. The fabric is stiff with frost at the hem, and as it thaws, it begins to sag under its own weight. You don't bother removing your boots. The soles are so soaked they fuse to your socks. Better to keep the heat trapped while it lasts. You head toward the pantry to figure out what to eat, or more accurately, what's edible. Winter doesn't just chill the body, it does strange things to food. You open a wooden cupboard and are greeted by a familiar smell. Mildew, starch, and that slightly sour edge that means something's turned, but you'll eat it anyway. On the shelf is a sack of potatoes, or rather, what's left of one. You reach inside and your fingers close around something solid. Too solid. You pull out a potato frozen all the way through, its skin blackened and waxy, its surface hard as a stone. When you drop it on the counter, it thunks like a paperweight. Another is cracked open, frozen from the inside out, its flesh crumbling like chalk. Useless. Possibly poisonous. You heard once that in really bad years, desperate cooks would boil frozen potatoes until they were soft enough to mash, then mix them with flour and fry them into flat cakes. You've tried it. Once. The result tasted like hot mud and regret. You move on. There's a cabbage on the table, its outer leaves yellow and shriveled. When you peel one back, it lets off a smell like wet wool and vinegar. Not rotted, just aged. You consider the loaf of bread you bought 3 days ago. It's sitting near the window, your mistake, and is now a block of edible masonry. You knock on it with your knuckle. Solid. You try to slice it and the knife bends. You try to break it and it breaks you. You sigh and grab a hammer from under the sink. Crack. A corner comes off. You nibble at it like a mouse, careful not to chip a tooth. It tastes faintly of flour and coal smoke. You're lucky, in a way. There are still things in the pantry. You've heard of families scraping mould off spoiled meat, or cooking with lard so old it smells like candles. One woman boiled shoe leather for dinner. Another made soup out of onion peelings and hot water, served it with a spoonful of salt and the lie that it would put hair on your chest. Your neighbour once told you she tried to make porridge from sawdust mixed with oat husks. It worked, she said. If you didn't mind splinters in your gums, you cut a chunk of the cabbage and toss it into the pot with a bit of onion, some carrot shavings, and a sliver of beef sweet saved from a week ago. You light the burner, it flickers, then catches. The smell is less soup and more survival. But the warmth rising from the pot feels like hope. You sit beside it and watch the water swirl. You think of Victorian kitchens in fine homes, where cooks worked over vast iron ranges, ladling thick gravy onto roast joints and baking pies with 6 types of spice. You imagine the steam rising from tureens, the golden crust of a game pie splitting under a silver spoon. Then you look down at your pot of cabbage water and the illusion slips away like steam against a window. Still, you stir, because even bad soup is better than no soup. You ladle the cabbage broth into a chipped bowl. It's thin, so thin you can see the bottom through it, but it's hot and it smells vaguely of onions. You cradle it between your palms like a relic, holding it close to your chest to steal whatever heat it dares to give. You sip. The flavour is muted, mostly salt and steam, with a trace of bitterness from the cabbage. You chew a carrot shaving and it crunches softly, a small act of rebellion against the mush of everything else. You eat slowly, savouring each spoonful, not because it's delicious, but because there aren't many of them. The bowl is warm in your hands. Your face begins to tingle where the heat touches it. It's the kind of meal that doesn't quite fill you, but it distracts you from your stomach long enough to matter. You glance over at the remains of the bread you hammered earlier. You consider toasting it over the flame, but the last time you tried, it caught fire within seconds and nearly took the curtain with it. You settle for soaking it in the soup. It softens reluctantly like a brick left in the rain. Still, you eat it. As you do, a memory rises of a dinner 2 winters ago when your neighbour served boiled swede and turnip mash with mustard seeds and declared it a feast. You remember laughing. It felt decadent then. A holiday. The memory makes your mouth twitch upward even now. Outside, the light is fading again. It's not even 4 o'clock, but the sun is already retreating, giving way to the long blue twilight that makes everything look like it's underwater. You squint through the window and see frost beginning to creep along the corners of the pane again, etching delicate patterns like feathers or seaweed. You wonder, absently, if anyone has ever tried to name the shapes. You clean your bowl with a crust of bread, wiping it dry with the last mouthful. No drop goes wasted. You stack it in the sink, which is full of yesterday's washing up, frozen solid. You tap a spoon against the edge of a cup and hear the clear, bright ting of ice. You wrap your shawl tighter and curl into the chair by the hearth. There's no fire, only memory, but you sit there anyway, because that's what you do after dinner. Even in the cold, routine comforts you. You tug the newspaper from beneath your blouse. It's now thoroughly crinkled and warm from your body heat, and smooth it out on your lap to read. The ink has smudged. Some of the words are unreadable. The news is days old anyway. Something about a railway accident in Leeds. A scandal involving a bishop. Parliament fighting about the price of flour again. But you read it all, slowly, because it gives your eyes something to do while your body begins the slow, nightly process of turning back into a block of ice. There's a sound from upstairs. Pipes groaning, maybe someone dragging a chair. The walls creak with the expansion and contraction of winter wood. This house is old, older than you, older than any of the furniture inside it. It's seen 100 winters. It knows the pattern. You press your cheek to your palm and exhale long and slow. The room fogs for a second. The candle on the table burns low and leans ever so slightly in the draught. And then comes the strange realization. Your soup, the one with the shriveled cabbage and ancient onion, is the best thing you'll taste this week. Maybe next week too. Not because it's good, but because it's hot. And in a winter like this, that's everything. Morning comes without warning. No rooster crow, no golden sunrise slipping through the curtains. Just the heavy groan of floorboards as someone downstairs moves about in the half-light, and the creak of a chair leg dragged across cold wood. You peel your eyes open, but the room looks the same as it did when you fell asleep, dim, grey, still. Like time forgot to pass. You lie there for a minute longer, gauging your body. Your fingers feel stiff, your toes ache. and your neck has a crick from sleeping curled like a snail under every scrap of blanket you own. You stretch gently, trying not to wake the pain in your joints. You hear coughing again. It echoes through the walls, not dry either, the thick chesty kind, deep and rattling. Someone's caught the winter chill and it's moved in for good. You try not to think about it. Everyone's coughing. It's practically a background hum, like the ticking of a clock. You sit up and rub your arms. The air bites instantly. You pull on your clothes over your nightdress without changing. It's too cold to strip bare. Today's job will be hard work and you'll need every layer you can manage. The others are stirring now. In the kitchen, someone's already boiled water, or at least warmed it, and the smell of porridge drifts up the stairwell. Thin stuff. You know that smell well. Oats, water, maybe a pinch of salt. If you're lucky, someone saved a dollop of treacle. But you're not thinking about food. You're thinking about work. Because today, you've got a shift at the laundry house, a place where heat and steam and sweat all battle the cold and sometimes win. It's one of the few places in London where people voluntarily go to be scalded, blistered and soaked. Why? Because at least you're not freezing. You wrap a scarf tight around your head, pulling it low over your ears, and step outside. The sky's bruised with early light, but the streets are already clattering. Wagon wheels crunch over half-frozen slush. A fish vendor barks out prices no one can afford. A butcher opens his shutters with a groan and a curse. As you walk, your feet begin to sting, not from cold exactly, from coming back to life. The blood starts to return as you move and it burns. You wince and walk faster. At the laundry house, the door sticks as you push it open. Inside, the air hits you like a wall, wet, hot, dense. Steam rolls toward you in thick clouds, heavy with a sense of soap, scorched fabric and wet wool. It's overwhelming, but it's warm. You take a moment to let the heat soak into your sleeves, into the weave of your shawl, into the tips of your ears. Then someone barks, "You late?" You shake your head, step inside, and take your place. The room is a cacophony of dripping cloth, hissing pipes, and sloshing tubs. Women haul linens into vats of near-boiling water, then stir them with long wooden paddles. Others wring them out over iron buckets, arms shaking from the effort. Every surface is wet, every floorboard slick. You know of at least one girl who slipped last week and scalded her hand so badly she had to quit. You plunge your arms into the first tub. The water scalds through the holes in your gloves. You hiss, but you don't stop. The pain means warmth. You stir the linens and watch the soap bubbles rise, dancing like tiny ghosts in the steamy air. The sweat on your forehead gathers fast, trickles down your temple, and disappears into your collar. It feels almost luxurious. The longer you stay in the laundry house, the more the steam begins to seep into your very bones. Your hair clings to your scalp, your sleeves sag with moisture, and your fingers have turned pale and wrinkled like boiled cloth themselves. But it's the first time in days you've actually sweated, and it feels, oddly, like a privilege. You trade off the paddle for the mangle, an enormous cast-iron contraption with 2 rollers the size of stovepipes. You feed the wet linens through it one by one, turning the crank until they're flattened and wrung dry. Mostly. The wringer fights you with each turn, squeaking and groaning as if it too has had enough of this winter. The handle bites into your palm. You switch hands. Again. A girl next to you sings softly under her breath. Something repetitive, simple, a rhythm to work by. You don't know the tune, but the cadence fits. You find yourself humming along. Another woman nearby joins in, her voice rasped from coal smoke and years of shouting over machinery. It's not joyful exactly, but it helps. You look around and see the lines of soaked clothing strung above, dripping like 100 tiny storms. Shirts, bloomers, bed sheets, lace collars, all steaming gently in the haze. Someone's managed to string their own mittens up there, hoping the heat will dry them before lunch. You wish you'd thought of that. At one of the tubs, a woman suddenly drops her cloth and sinks onto the stool behind her, gasping. Her hands are red. The raw kind of red. One of the supervisors rushes over, frowns, and wraps her fingers in a towel. "You got to ease them in slower," she mutters. "You throw frozen hands in boiling water. They'll crack like eggshells." The woman nods, doesn't cry. Just holds her hands close and breathes through her teeth. You return to the mangle. Press, crank, press, crank. When your arms give out, you switch to folding. Quick movements, crisp corners, stacking garments into tidy piles for collection. Your fingers leave damp prints on the cloth, which will fade before delivery. You handle someone's nightshirt. Fine cotton, soft, stitched with initials. You wonder about the person it belongs to, what sort of bed they sleep in, if their house is warm enough that their water doesn't freeze overnight, if their fireplace ever goes out. Probably not. A fringe detail comes to mind. One of the older women once told you that rich folk used to send their laundry out in locked trunks, just to prevent the maids from stealing their fancy underthings, as if the poor wanted someone else's bloomers. You scoff at the thought and snap the shirt smooth. At midday, a whistle blows and you all sit on benches along the wall, steam still clinging to your shoulders like a second skin. Someone passes a tin of tea around. You sip it slowly. It's weak, bitter, but hot. Your throat thanks you. Conversation is quiet, tired. Someone mentions her child is sick. Another says her roof has started leaking again. You listen, nodding, but say little. You're conserving energy. After lunch it'll be back to the tubs, and the water won't feel quite so warm the second time around. You roll your shoulders, stretch your back, and glance down at your sleeves. They're soaked. So are your skirts. Your socks squish when you shift on the bench. You know that when you step outside, all of this dampness, this fleeting warmth, will turn against you. Your clothes will freeze in layers, your wet boots will harden, and the sweat on your skin will become ice. But you also know this. For a few hours you weren't cold. You were exhausted. You were blistered. You were soaked, but not cold. And in Victorian winter, that counts as victory. You open the door to the outside and the cold hits you like a memory. Everything your body had briefly forgotten, how to clench, how to shiver, how to ache, returns in a single breath. The wet wool of your skirt begins to freeze before you even reach the first corner. The fabric stiffens with each step, forming odd folds like the pleats in a curtain that's been left outside overnight. Your boots, soaked through from the laundry steam, begin to harden as well. With every stride, the soles smack against the street like frozen meat slapped on a butcher's block. You curl your toes inside, trying to keep the blood moving. It works, barely. It's getting darker now. You know it's not truly late, but the sun disappears early in winter, slipping behind chimney stacks by mid-afternoon. Gas lamps flicker to life one by one, halos in the mist. Some hiss and sputter as if annoyed by the work. Others glow steadily, casting long quivering shadows on the uneven cobbles. You walk past a row of basement windows. Each one tells a different story. Behind one pane, a family huddles around a low fire, 2 children leaning toward the warmth, their hands out like petals toward light. In another, a seamstress works under a single gas jet, her back hunched, face tight with concentration. In a third, there's nothing but an empty chair and a crust of bread left on a plate. You pull your shawl tighter. The street narrows as you move toward the older part of town. This is where the sellers live. Not the cozy kind. The other kind. The kind people rent because they have no choice. Below ground. Damp. Windowless. Cold as grave plots. You know someone who lives in one of these. Her name is Nora. She used to work at the mangle beside you. Then her hands gave out. The joints swelled, the skin cracked, and every twist of the crank sent pain up her arms like lightning. The doctor said it was rheumatism. Nora said it was just winter. Now she sells matches on the corner, sitting on a crate, knees pressed together, lips purple, fingers black at the nails. She can't strike the matches herself anymore. She just holds the bundle and hopes someone pities her. You stop by her corner. She's there, barely visible in the gloom, bundled in a coat made from 3 different others, patches of brown, grey, and something once red. She sees you and lifts a trembling hand. "Cold one," she rasps. You nod. "Here," you say, reaching into your pocket and handing her the crust of bread you saved from lunch. She takes it like a jewel. "Thank you, love." You offer to walk her home, but she shakes her head. "Not yet. The men from the print house come by after dusk. Sometimes they buy 2 bundles. You know what that means. They buy the matches not because they need them, but because they're warm from the pub and feeling generous. Or guilty. You don't press her. You just leave the other half of your cabbage roll on the crate beside her and move on. As you walk, the smell of roasted meat hits your nose. It's coming from a nearby shop, one of the newer places with gas lamps inside and a brass bell on the door. There's a roast turning slowly in the window, glistening and golden. You pause just long enough to watch it spin. A child stands beside you, eyes wide, lips parted. He's maybe 6, wearing a jacket too big and boots too small. You glance down. His fingers are tucked into his sleeves. His cheeks are raw. You look at the meat again, then at the boy, then you walk away. There's nothing you can do tonight. You turn down a narrow lane, the kind that always smells faintly of damp stone and boiled onions. The lanterns don't reach this far, so you walk mostly by feel, counting steps, brushing your fingertips along the bricks, listening for the familiar creak of the iron gate that marks the back of your building. A shout echoes somewhere behind you, then laughter, drunken. You duck your head and quicken your pace, not because they're dangerous necessarily, but because they're warm and you aren't, and that contrast makes people unpredictable. Someone full of gin and roast pork can't imagine the cold creeping up your spine right now like a set of icy fingers. You find the gate and push it open with your hip. It resists, hinges stiff with frost, but finally groans aside. You step into the shared courtyard. It's little more than a patch of packed dirt and broken stone, surrounded by the backs of row houses with laundry lines zigzagging overhead like spider webs. You make for the cellar door tucked beneath the stairs. Your feet crunch over salt someone scattered earlier. Too little, too late. A patch of ice waits just beneath it. You don't slip this time, but your boots skid slightly, and your knee jars. You hiss and breathe through your teeth. That ache will stay with you through the night. The cellar door opens into a room no taller than you can stand, just barely. You duck automatically. The ceiling here is low, the beams thick and black with age. You've hit your head on them enough to remember. Inside it smells like wet clay, soot and sleep. There are 3 pallets on the floor. One's yours. You can tell by the faint imprint in the straw ticking and the way the blanket is stiffened into a shape, vaguely resembling your body. You kneel beside it and begin removing your layers slowly, carefully, as if peeling back the day itself. Scarf, coat, shawl, skirt. You fold each one and place it beside your bed, though you know tomorrow they'll be as cold as stone again. Your fingers are red. Your breath curls like smoke as you exhale. You sit on the pallet. And then you do something very Victorian, very practical. and very much learned from experience. You pull your knees to your chest, wrap your arms around your shins, and wait for your own body to warm itself. Movement helps. Tension holds in the heat. Stillness is a luxury for people with fireplaces. Your roommate stirs from the far end. She doesn't speak, just coughs into her sleeve and turns over. You hear the straw crunch beneath her. It sounds like footsteps in snow. Then, the drip. Always the drip. Somewhere near the far wall, a slow leak from the pipes above falls in steady rhythm into a tin cup left there to catch it. Plink, plink, plink. One of you will empty it in the morning, or not. If it overflows, it just seeps into the floor and turns to frost by morning. You lie down, wrapping yourself in your blanket and your blouse and your dignity. Then you feel it, the scratch of something moving. Not quickly, just a soft rustle near the corner. You don't look. You already know it's a rat. Maybe two. They don't bother you, not if you don't bother them. You've even named one of them, George, after a particularly smug landlord you once had. He only shows up on nights below freezing. Tonight, apparently, is one of those. You shift, pulling the blanket tighter, tucking it beneath your chin and over your ears. You close your eyes. You listen. Plink, plink. The rats stop moving. Even they need to sleep. And just as you begin to drift, body exhausted, cold finally forgotten, one last sound joins the room. The cough. From the girl in the corner, deep, slow, followed by silence. No one speaks. That cough is a familiar one. You'll check in the morning. You always do. You wake up before the sun, if it even rises properly these days. The cellar is silent except for the occasional shifting of straw and the constant, ceaseless drip. You lie still for a moment, staring into the dark, wondering if it's worth moving. Then you hear the cough again. Same corner, same girl. It's softer this morning. Not because she's better, because she's worse. Her body's too tired now for the dramatic racking fits. What comes out is a whisper of illness, like the final puffs of a dying chimney. You sit up and wrap yourself in your shawl. The air inside your blanket is already cooler than your skin, and it makes you shudder as it leaves you. You cross the floor, barefoot on the icy stone. You crouch beside her and call her name gently. She opens her eyes. Barely. You press the back of your hand to her forehead. She's hot. Burning. The kind of heat that doesn't come from blankets or fire, but from the body fighting itself. You feel her breath. Shallow and sour, like damp metal and milk left too long. She tries to speak, but only a wheeze escapes. She won't be working today. You both know that. You tuck the blanket around her more tightly and place your only extra scarf beneath her head. She smiles, weakly. Or maybe it's just the way her face settles when she's trying to breathe. You stand and look around the cellar. Your other roommate is still asleep, turned to the wall, one hand poking out from beneath the covers like a twig. She stirs slightly when you move past, but doesn't wake. You dress quickly, slipping into yesterday's layers while your breath fogs in front of your face. The coat crackles as you pull it on. The dampness has frozen it stiff again. Your fingers are already protesting. You bend each one, coaxing life back in. They don't bend all the way. That's become normal. Upstairs, the common hallway is just as frigid. You reach the basin near the window. The water's solid. Again. You chip at it with the back of a spoon until you've broken enough to splash onto your cheeks. It burns. But you need to feel something this morning. You head into the main room where other tenants are stirring, wrapping shawls around heads, lighting stoves with the last bits of coal, rubbing hands together over flickering flames that die almost as soon as they're born. You sit with them, not to eat, just to be. No one talks. There's nothing to say. You listen to the muffled sounds of London waking. a cart rolling past, the hollow clop of horse hooves on frozen stone, the distant toll of a church bell. Someone opens the front door and swears softly as a gust of wind tears through the stairwell. You think about the girl downstairs. She won't be the last to fall sick. Winter always finds the weak spots, in people, in walls, in spirits. You've seen it happen year after year, not with drama, just a quiet unravelling. And in some households, the cold isn't just a hardship, it's a test. Take the governesses. You've known a few, girls your age or younger, hired to live in well-to-do homes and care for someone else's children. They live upstairs, eat after everyone else, and must always appear composed. You once saw a governess get scolded for wearing gloves at the dinner table. Her fingers were blue, but gloves weren't ladylike, said the mistress of the house, while sipping tea beside a roaring fireplace. The girl nodded, apologised, then passed out 50 minutes later from the chill. You remember that because it taught you something. Cold is not just a physical thing in this city, it's a performance, and if you fail the role, even for a moment, it notices. You step back out into the cold, but now you're watching more closely, not just for the ice on the ground, but for the people who are performing through it. You pass a young governess standing perfectly still near a wrought iron gate, holding the gloved hand of a child in velvet boots. She's in full dress, stiff bodice, long skirt, no visible coat, only a shawl folded neatly over her shoulders. Her face is calm, serene, but her lips are pale and pressed tight. The child chatters about his pony, oblivious to the chill. The governess gives a polite smile, her breath fogging lightly with each exhale, while her fingers clench around the child's in barely controlled tremors. She's freezing, but she can't show it. You watch her for a moment longer, then keep walking. You know the type, employed, but not protected, sheltered, but never safe. She'll be scolded if her hem is wet, if her cheeks are red, if her gloves have holes, if her posture suggests even the possibility of discomfort. Her job is not to stay warm. Her job is to be invisible and perfect. You turn the corner and nearly collide with a clerk in a starched collar, his coat so thin it may as well be paper. He mutters an apology without looking up, clutching a leather case to his chest like a shield. His shoes are polished to a shine, but the leather's cracked along the seams, and the laces are knotted with fraying twine. He's another kind of performance, clean-shaven, upright, proud, until he coughs suddenly, bending at the waist with the force of it. His whole body racks. He swallows hard and keeps walking, eyes fixed straight ahead. You pass shop girls lined up outside a millinery, brushing snow from their skirts with stiff reddened fingers before the shop opens. Their hats are neat, their faces powdered, but one of them has wrapped her ankles in strips of cloth beneath her stockings. You catch a glimpse as she adjusts her hem. She sees you see. Neither of you says a word. Respectability doesn't come with insulation. In fact, in Victorian London, the more respectable you're expected to look, the more dangerous winter becomes. Poor folk layer whatever they have, shawls, newspaper, fur scraps, potato sacks if they must. But the respectable are required to wear the right things, not the warm things. Silk gloves instead of woolen mittens, satin slippers indoors, even when the floor's cold as a tombstone. You once heard of a society woman who died of pneumonia after attending a winter ball in a sleeveless gown. The doctor called it a cold, but her maid said she was shivering before she even left the house. And you've been lucky to never need to pretend you're warm when you're not. You reach the post office and step inside. It's just as frigid as the street, but at least the wind is gone. You queue behind a row of clerks, all wearing stiff collars and hollow eyes. One girl behind the counter is tapping a ledger with blue-stained fingers. You wonder if she can even feel the pen. When it's your turn, you speak softly, politely. You tuck your hands under your arms while she fetches the parcel. Something wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. You don't know what's inside. It isn't yours. You're delivering it for a neighbour too sick to stand. The clerk thanks you without making eye contact. She turns her head to cough, then swallows the rest. You take the parcel, nod once, and head back into the cold. You're beginning to understand now. The frost outside is only part of the danger. It's the cold you can't show that hurts the most. By the time you return to the cellar, the light has faded completely. You could mistake it for late evening, but it's barely past 3. That's how winter works here. It folds the day into a single long shadow, dragging morning straight into night. You step inside and are hit with a wall of stillness. The drip has stopped. That's the first thing you notice. The tin cup by the wall is full, frozen solid, the overflow forming a brittle ring around its base. No one's emptied it. No one's moved it. That too is a sign. You glance toward the far corner where the girl lies. She hasn't stirred. You walk quietly, each step crackling over straw and frozen cloth. You kneel beside her. The scarf you tucked under her head is damp with breath. But no new breath is coming. You sit there for a long time. No sobbing. No calling for help. What would be the point? You've seen this before. Cold doesn't always kill with frostbite or starvation. Sometimes it just weakens someone slowly, eroding their body until the smallest cough becomes an avalanche. You think she had a name. Something soft. Something like Elsie or Mary. But she didn't speak much and no one asked. There won't be a funeral, not a proper one. Someone will carry her out the back and notify the clerk. The city has a system for this. Pauper's death, cloth shroud, mass grave when the ground thaws, if it thaws. You stay beside her a few more minutes, your hand resting lightly on hers, still warm. That's the worst part. You stand and return to your pallet. You sit, not because you're tired, but because that's what there is to do. Sit, wait, endure. Later upstairs, the other tenants speak in murmurs. One mentions she hadn't eaten in 2 days. Another recalls hearing her cough last week, sharp as a snapped twig. Someone else wonders aloud if they should say something. To whom? About what? The talk fades quickly. No one wants to get too close to death in winter. You go outside for air, though air feels like a cruel joke. The sky is bruised again, and the wind has picked up. You tug your scarf higher. You can still taste the post office soot on your tongue. You walk a few blocks without purpose, and then, as you turn a corner near the tenement blocks, you hear it. Low, rhythmic coughing. Not one person. Dozens. A whole building. Coughing like it breathes with one diseased set of lungs. You stop in your tracks. The windows are dark. A few have candles flickering behind dirty curtains. A cracked door swings open briefly and slams shut again. Somewhere inside, a child wails. The sound is brief, high-pitched and unanswered. This building, this whole street, is sick. You don't go any closer. Instead, you stand at the far end of the block and watch the condensation rise in soft puffs from each chimney one by one. You remember reading that London hospitals used to run out of beds by January. That's when the winter rooms opened. Church halls, poorhouses, even warehouses, all lined with straw mats and coughing bodies. The city called it charity, but it was just containment, a place to put people like her, the girl in your cellar. You exhale slowly, your breath a thin mist in the dark. Tomorrow you'll go back to work. You'll tell the others. Someone will carry her out. Someone else will take her place. That's winter. It doesn't pause. It doesn't flinch. It simply continues. You return home in silence. No one greets you. No one asks about the air, the streets, the parcel, the girl. The cellar feels like it's holding its breath. The others are pretending not to know what's just happened, because knowing would mean feeling something, and feeling something would mean slowing down. And winter doesn't allow that. You remove your boots. The frost that clung to them outside now melts into a puddle at your feet, soaking into the hem of your skirts. You step over it and return to your corner. The girl in the far cot is still there, but soon someone will knock. A clerk, a stretcher bearer, a man with a ledger and a lantern who doesn't look you in the eyes. They'll carry her out quietly. No ceremony, no prayers. You remember what an old tenant once said, "People leave here quieter than mice." You sit on your pallet and wrap your shawl around your shoulders, pulling it tighter, tighter, until it feels like a second skin. You don't speak. Neither does anyone else. The room has gone mute again, except for the slow, relentless tap of water thawing from a pipe above. Plink, plink. You think about how many sick rooms must be filling right now. You think about the public infirmaries with rows of straw beds, where women lie with towels over their chests, coughing into rags already stiff with old blood. You think about the coughing girl across the hall you saw last week, her mother rubbing mustard oil on her ribs, praying it would draw out the chill. You think about how close you are to being one of them. It doesn't take much. One bad day, one shift in the weather, one cold night too many, a draught along the spine, a wet boot left on too long, a skipped meal. There are people who've lived their whole lives just a breath away from the sick room, and don't even know it until winter nudges them across the threshold. You remember a woman who lived in the room upstairs 3 winters ago. She was strong, worked as a cleaner in the city offices, walked to work every morning before sunrise and still came home with her hands red from scrubbing marble floors. She caught a chill walking home one night, got soaked in a snow flurry. Her boots were cracked, her stockings thin. The next morning she was coughing. 4 days later she was gone. No one even knew her last name. You stand and relight the small candle stub on the windowsill. Its glow barely reaches the opposite wall, but you stare into it anyway, letting your eyes rest in the flickering warmth. Outside you hear the clatter of a cart. Moments later, the knock. You open the door. The man is polite. He doesn't speak much, just nods at the room, steps inside, and bends beside the girl's pallet. He moves with practiced hands. You know he does this 20 times a day, maybe more. She's gone in less than 2 minutes. The room is quieter than before, but heavier somehow. You sit again, blinking slowly. The candle leans. The flame dances. You close your eyes. Tomorrow will come, and someone else will take that corner. Maybe someone already has. In this city, the sick rooms don't stay empty long. You walk past the corner where the match girls gather. There are fewer of them today. Maybe it's the cold, or maybe it's the sickness. Or maybe it's just what happens, quietly, when winter drags on and children disappear one by one. Not with drama, but with the slow erosion of hunger and frost. The youngest among them can't be more than 5. She sits on an upturned crate, her legs swinging above the icy cobbles. Her toes are bare, wrapped only in strips of cloth that barely stay in place. She clutches a bundle of matches, eyes wide, nose red and leaking, lips moving in what might be a song or a prayer or nothing at all. You stop and crouch beside her. "Cold today," you say gently. She nods, not looking up. "Sold 2 bundles," she whispers, then adds, "Only need 1 more." You don't ask what happens if she doesn't sell it. You already know. Her coat is 2 sizes too big, made for someone with hips and shoulders. It sags off her like a tent. The sleeves bunched at the elbows. You see something shiny at her wrist. A strip of tin foil, maybe, wrapped like a bracelet. A bit of leftover chocolate paper reflecting the lamplight. A treasure. You hand her the only coin you have left. Not much. Enough for 1 bundle. She blinks up at you, uncertain. For the last one, you say. She nods and presses the match bundle into your hand. It's warm from her fingers. You don't want it, but you take it anyway. The transaction is sacred. She needs to know she earned it. You leave her sitting there, humming again, shoulders shaking slightly, not from cold, but from something deeper, a fatigue that doesn't belong on someone so small. Further down the road you pass a boy running barefoot. No shoes at all, just ragged trousers, a scarf that's more hole than fabric, and a loaf of bread clutched to his chest like a prize. You don't know if he stole it. You don't care. Children here learn fast. There's warmth in motion. As long as you're running, jumping, shouting, you're alive. The moment you sit still too long, the cold begins to win. You reach the alley behind the bakery, where another group huddles near the refuse bins. 2 girls and a boy, all older than the match girl but still years away from adulthood. One has a burn mark on her forearm, likely from a stove. The other's coughing so hard she can't speak. The boy gestures to a soot-blackened tin can full of fire. It's barely more than a candle, really. Just scraps of crate wood and paper smouldering in a metal cup. But it draws them like moths. They reach their hands toward it, laughing at how little it does. You join them. For a few minutes you all just stand there, hands out, backs hunched, eyes half-lidded. You remember hearing once that Queen Victoria lit 1,000 candles for Christmas one year, that her dining room stayed warm even during snowstorms, and her pianos were kept tuned with fresh lemon oil, so the ivory keys wouldn't crack from the cold. You wonder what she'd make of this scene. Probably nothing. A girl nearby offers you half a potato. It's cold, raw, but it's food. You bite it slowly and nod your thanks. It crunches like an apple and tastes like soil. And still, it's a kindness, and you take it. Because in a winter like this, children don't have much to give. But what they do give, they give completely. You sit with the children a while longer, crouch near the flickering tin fire as the light dims and the wind sharpens. One of the girls tucks her hands beneath her knees to keep them warm. The boy pokes at the embers with a twig, trying to coax one last flame from a blackened sliver of crate wood. A gust of wind sweeps down the alley and lifts the edge of your skirt. You grab it just in time, but not before the cold sneaks beneath your layers like a knife. The girl beside you sees you flinch. "It's gonna snow again," she mutters. You glance up. She's right. The clouds have that heavy look to them, low and swollen like bags ready to burst. The last thing any of you need is fresh snow. It hides the ice, it dampens your shoes, and it covers the scraps you might otherwise find to burn or eat. The boy stands up suddenly and says, "Privy," before disappearing around the corner. You wince. It reminds you. There's that to deal with too. You make your way down another side lane toward the public privy. It's little more than a brick box, open roof, wooden seat, and a door that doesn't latch properly. There's a queue of 3 ahead of you already. A man in a work coat, a pregnant woman with cracked shoes, and a boy bouncing from foot to foot trying to keep warm. The smell hits you before the cold does. You step inside finally, and the first thing you notice is the frost. Frost on the seat, frost on the hinges, frost on the stone floor that bites through your boots and up into your ankles. You brace yourself with one hand against the wall, not because of filth, but for balance. You don't want to slip. Falling in here wouldn't just be humiliating, it would be dangerous. You've heard stories. A woman slipped last year and knocked herself unconscious. Another man's coat caught on a nail and left him stuck there half the night. You even heard that someone froze to death on one of the seats, because he was drunk or sick or just too tired to keep going. You don't know if the stories are true, but you believe them anyway. Because in a winter like this, nothing is too strange to be real. You finish quickly and exit without making eye contact with the next in line. Your breath fogs thick and fast. You walk fast, arms tucked, trying to bring your body back to life. Your knees ache. Your fingers sting. Your ears feel like they've been carved from ice. Back near the alley, the children are gone. The fire is out. Only the tin can remains, tilted on its side, cold and black. You pick it up, holding it for a moment, then set it carefully against the wall, as if preserving something sacred. You walk on, your boots leaving prints in the slush now crusted over with new frost. You pass a lamplighter with a long pole, nudging the gas jet above your head. The flame flickers to life. He doesn't look down. He's in a hurry. It's already late, and the city has miles of lamps to light. You wonder if he's ever lit one in time to stop someone from slipping, or helped a child find their way home, or if he's just one more figure swallowed by the cold fog and early dark. You return home. The cellar is quiet. A new girl has arrived, already curled up in the empty cot, her face hidden in her scarf. You say nothing. She says nothing, but she'll learn, like you did, like they all do. Because in a Victorian winter, even children must be quick to understand. You don't wait for warmth. You hunt it, borrow it, steal it, or become it. You wake in the middle of the night to the call of nature, and the dread that comes with it. You try to ignore it. You shift under your blanket. You change positions. You count backward from 100, willing your body to wait until morning. But there's no negotiating with a full bladder when it's 3 degrees above freezing and your walls are sweating with frost. So you rise, quietly, slowly. No sense waking the others, especially the new girl. She's still curled tight in the far corner, unmoving except for the faint rise and fall of her breath. Let her enjoy what little rest she's earned. You fumble into your coat, not because it'll keep you warm, but because the pockets hold a half-used candle stub and a box of matches. You slide your feet into your boots, which are frozen into curved shapes like the husks of old loaves. One laces, barely. The other you simply tug tight and hope for the best. You push open the cellar door and are greeted by a gust of wind that makes your ribs tighten. It's not just cold, it's violent. It tears at your sleeves and slips beneath your scarf like water under a door. You make your way to the privy with stiff legs and faster steps. It's worse at night. You already know this. The wind is sharper, the sky darker, and the world feels more dangerous. Even the snow looks meaner, iced over and gritty, like it's been lying in wait. The stars, if they exist, are hidden. The moon is a smudge of pale milk behind thick fog. When you reach the outhouse, you stop and stare at the door. A thin sheet of ice has sealed it shut. You pull once, gently. Nothing. You tug harder. The wood groans, then gives with a shriek that seems too loud for the hour. You flinch. Wait. Nothing but the wind. Inside, the seat is unwelcoming. You don't want to do this. But there's no choice. You manage quickly, bracing your hand on the cold wood, careful not to shift too much. You hold your breath. The air is damp with rot and ash and something worse. You try not to think about it. Then, you're done. You bolt from the seat, heart pounding, eyes watering, half from the stench, half from the fear of slipping again on the way out. You step into the street and immediately freeze, this time not from the air. A figure stands at the end of the alley, not moving, just standing. You can't tell who it is, not at first. Then they step into the moonlight, or what passes for it, and you see, it's one of the boys from earlier, one of the match sellers. His hands are in his coat and he's shaking. He sees you and grins. "You're brave," he says. You blink. "It's the cold that's brave," you murmur, too tired to sound clever. He laughs, and it comes out as a wheeze. "You got any bread?" You reach into your coat. A crust, hard as iron. You toss it to him. He catches it, bites down, then winces. "I'll wait till morning," he says, pocketing it. You nod. The two of you stand there in silence for a while staring at opposite ends of the street, neither moving, neither quite willing to be the first to turn back into the dark. Then he waves once, turns, and walks into the fog. You don't see where he goes, but you remember that look in his eye, not of hunger, not even of cold, but of calculation. Because even the smallest children in this city must learn something unpleasant. It's not just food you compete for, it's time, warm minutes, safe minutes, empty privies, open fires. In London, winter, even the dark has a cue. You return to the cellar, your boots leaving tiny lakes where the frost on the soles begins to melt. The candle's nearly spent, its stub casting a halo no bigger than your palm. You slip back onto your pallet, but sleep doesn't come easily this time. Not after the privy, not after the boy, not after that wind. You stare at the ceiling, though there's nothing to see but blackness. You count the drips again, listen for creaks in the floorboards above, and try to forget the seat's icy kiss against your thighs. But your mind drifts, because of course it does, to the people who don't get up in the night. Not because they don't need to, but because they can't. You think of the older tenants, the ones in the upstairs rooms who've stopped leaving their beds entirely. There's an old man 2 floors up who hasn't gone to the privy in 3 days. You know this because someone had to clean a bucket for him. They say it's just part of growing old, but you know better. It's the cold, always the cold. It eats away at movement, dignity, memory. 1 minute you're shrugging off the wind, proud of your scarf and your stamina, and the next you're too stiff to sit up waiting for someone younger to remember you're there. You fall asleep eventually, curled around your own breath, and wake to a commotion, a knock, a voice, then 2. You sit up slowly, spine clicking like a box of pins. A man is in the hallway. He's calling for someone. For her, the new girl. But she's already gone. Not dead. Just gone. Vanished before dawn. Probably realised what this place really was and chose to leave before her body caught up with the reality. You understand. It's not the kind of place you stay in for long if you can help it. The man leaves disappointed. He mutters something about laundries, about girls who don't follow rules, about how he had a shift for her. The door shuts. The silence returns. You crawl from your blanket and look at the empty cot. Her scarf is still there. A bit of brown wool, frayed at the ends. She must have left in a rush. Or maybe she just couldn't carry everything. You don't touch it. Later, in the common room, someone brings news. A man was found behind the tavern last night, collapsed near the privy, legs curled beneath him like he sat down mid-step. Frost on his coat, breath long gone. They say he was holding something in his hand. No one knows what. Some say bread. Others say nothing at all. You don't ask. You eat what little you have in silence, the others doing the same. Everyone's thinking the same thing. At least it wasn't me. It's a thought that returns more and more often the deeper you go into winter. You dress for work. Your gloves haven't dried overnight and the cuffs crackle as you pull them on. Your coat smells of damp wool and faint smoke. You've stopped noticing. You head toward the door, but pause. Something strange is happening outside. You step into the street and realise what it is. It's stopped snowing. The air is still. The sky's the colour of pewter. The street is slick but calm. No wind, no sleet, no flakes swirling like ash. Just silence. The kind that feels like the breath before a storm. You walk slowly, boots crunching over salted slush, and you feel it. A shift. Not warmth. Not yet, but a pause. The city is holding still just for a moment. You breathe in, and for the first time in weeks, you don't see your breath. The fire is already out when you return, not because it died, because someone else took your place by the hearth. That's how it works here. Heat doesn't belong to anyone. It belongs to whoever reaches it first. You don't mind. Much. The warmth that remains is barely enough to toast a crust of bread, let alone a room full of bodies. So you gather your things and retreat to your corner of the cellar. Your blanket is still damp from last night's frost. The shawl you hung near the stairs is frozen stiff at one end. You snap it gently, shaking off crystals that fall like glass dust onto the floor. You sit and you wait. That's what nights are now. Waiting sessions. Waiting for the frost to crawl across the beams again. Waiting for the matches to run out. Waiting for your fingers to stop tingling, or your eyes to stop watering, or the ache in your spine to settle into something dull and constant. Your breath curls up and vanishes. Then you hear the footsteps. Not down here, upstairs. A stomp, then another. A voice raised in frustration. Then the shuffle of feet like someone pacing. You recognize it. It's the family from the 3rd floor. 6 people in 2 rooms. One of them's a baby, barely walking, whose cries have been thinning out these last few nights. The mother's voice cuts through the ceiling again. Not angry, desperate. You know that tone. You throw on your coat and climb the steps. By the time you reach their door, it's open. The mother stands just inside, arms wrapped tight around herself. Her eyes are rimmed red. The baby isn't crying. He's whimpering, soft and choked, like the cold has settled into his throat. There's a little boy sitting cross-legged on the floor with a single tattered quilt wrapped around his shoulders. His lips are blue, his nose crusted. He's not even watching you, just staring at the empty fireplace like it might fix itself. You don't ask what happened. You know what happened. The last blanket is too thin. The firewood is gone. The baby's too cold to scream. You glance around the room. Nothing left to burn. Not even paper. Not even rags. You reach under your coat and pull out your blanket, the one you've been hoarding. It's not much. It smells of smoke and mildew, but it's better than what they've got. You hand it to her. She looks at you like you've offered her the moon. Then she takes it, wraps the baby first, then the boy, tucking it around them with the care of someone who's done it 100 times and still isn't good at it. The father enters from the other room, face grey, shoulders dusted with snow. He nods at you. That's all. No thank you. No words. Just the nod. You nod back. That's the deal. Unspoken. You leave quietly, your boots echoing in the stairwell. Back in the cellar, it's colder than before. The fire has completely died. The coals are black. You lie down with your coat still on. It's thin, but it's all you have now, and you'd give it again. Because some nights, warmth doesn't come from what's on your back. It comes from what you're willing to give away. The next morning greets you not with birdsong or sunrise, but with coughing. Rough, barked, rattling coughing. From the upstairs rooms, from the hallway, from behind the cellar door. It sounds like the whole building is wheezing in unison, the kind of sound that sticks in your throat just hearing it. You sit up slowly, joints stiff, the back of your neck clammy from cold sweat. You don't feel ill, not exactly, just heavy, like your limbs were dipped in wet wool and left to dry on your bones. The girl beside you stirs. She doesn't open her eyes. You shake her gently. Nothing. Then, finally, a grunt. She rolls over. Alive. Just slow. The street outside is quieter than usual. That should be a good thing, but it never is. Quiet in winter London means something else has gone wrong. You step outside, bundled in all your layers, and catch it right away. The milkman isn't shouting. The fishmonger's cart hasn't passed. No coal dust in the air. Just a few bent figures trudging toward the workyards with their scarves wrapped up to their eyes. You join them, feet aching in boots still soaked from the day before. As you reach the corner, you pass a woman you've seen a dozen times before. She's older, maybe late 40s, with a bold floral shawl she wears like armour. Today, it's gone. She's wearing a man's jacket, too large, torn at the sleeve. Her lips are chapped so badly they're bleeding. She doesn't meet your eyes. You know what happened. She sold the shawl. It wasn't just for money. It was to buy time. Time indoors. Time near a grate. Time where the wind couldn't climb down her collar and into her lungs. You cross paths with a child handing out leaflets, white scraps fluttering like snow. He tries to push one into your hand, but his fingers are so red and stiff he drops it before you even touch it. It lands face up. You catch a glimpse of what it says. Keep warm. Fever season has begun. Your stomach drops. Not again. Last year, fever hit just after the cold snap. Just when people thought things couldn't get worse, they did. And not just any fever. The kind that lingers. That burns hot and leaves a chill in its wake. That takes the old, the young, the weak, and anyone with lungs already half filled with soot and fog. You remember your neighbour, Mrs. Kettle. She was strong, took in laundry even in winter, smoked a pipe, said it cleared the chill. She laughed in the face of frostbite. She died in February, 2 days after coughing blood onto her bedsheet. You walk faster. At the workyard they hand you a shovel. You're clearing snow again, this time near the canal. The wind off the water is brutal. It slices rather than stings. One man collapses midway through the morning and is dragged to the side. No one speaks. The foreman just mutters, "Keep going." You do. You keep going because stopping means freezing. You keep going because someone else is already eyeing your shovel, your post, your place on the ledger. You keep going because this is how winters work here. Cold takes the slow. Illness takes the unlucky. Hunger takes the rest. And somehow you still feel lucky. Because for now, your legs still move, your breath still fogs, your stomach still growls, which means you're still here. By now, you've learned to tell the difference between a bad winter day and a very bad one. Today is a very bad one. You don't even need to open your eyes to know it. The air tastes metallic. Your blanket, still damp from the body heat you barely generate, is stiff at the edges like it tried to freeze overnight and gave up halfway. Your fingertips sting, not from cold, but from the return of blood after too long without it. Your joints crack as you sit up. You're too tired to groan. There's already movement in the cellar. Someone is pacing. Probably Albert, the one who insists the cold is good for the lungs, but wears 2 pairs of trousers and curses every draft. He's muttering something about ice forming on the inside of the window panes upstairs. You force yourself up. There's no work today. The docks are frozen solid, and the coal wagons haven't made it through the sludge that now counts as a road. Even the soot has stopped flying. The city has gone still. Too still. Outside, the fog is so thick you could scoop it into your pockets. You step into it and it swallows you whole. And there, somewhere between the cellar and the shop front, is when you begin to notice it. The sound of bells, not the cheerful kind, not Christmas bells or chapel bells. These are soft, flat, muffled. They come from carts pushed slowly through alleys. You know what they are now. Dead carts. The fever's spreading. You don't see the bodies. They're wrapped in cloth. Piled 2, 3 at a time, covered in what looks like burlap or old curtains. The man pushing the cart wears a scarf over his nose and mouth, but he coughs anyway, a wet, sticky cough. You turn away and keep walking. You're not sick. Yet. But you can feel it in your chest. The way your breath whistles faintly when you move too fast. The heaviness behind your eyes. You convince yourself it's the cold. It's always the cold. You reach the market square, or what's left of it. Most of the stalls are shuttered. The apple seller is gone. The woman with the stale meat pies is gone. Only one man remains, selling candles from a splintered crate. His breath fogs as he says the price. You buy one. It costs more than a loaf of bread used to. You head back, candle in hand, thinking about how strange it is to crave light more than food. On your way, you pass the butcher's boy. He's younger than you, maybe 9, maybe less. He's got a basket strapped to his back and his eyes are wild. He runs, not walks, across the slush-slick cobblestones, slipping once but never falling. You wonder what he's running from, or to, probably both. You reach the cellar door, push it open, and that's when the smell hits you. It's not smoke, not damp, not rot. It's sickness. Thick and sour like wet rags left too long in a corner. Someone's coughing, someone else is moaning. You recognize the sounds immediately, not from memory but from instinct. You set the candle down and don't light it yet. Instead, you step forward and listen. Because now the question isn't how to stay warm, it's how to stay alive. You don't panic, not right away. Instead, you crouch near the back wall, where the damp is thickest and the draft strongest. It's strange how suddenly the cold becomes your ally. It's cleaner, at least. Safer. Nothing can fester in the cold, right? That's what people say, that fevers hate the chill. But here, in this cellar, it seems the sickness has made peace with it. You listen again. The girl in the far corner is breathing hard. Not quick, not shallow, just loud. Her lungs rattle like broken bellows. You glance over and see her curled under 2 blankets, one pulled up over her nose. She doesn't stir. The man beside her keeps his distance, shoulders hunched, staring into the dark like if he looks hard enough, he can will her well. You recognize that look. You've worn it before. Someone whispers your name. You turn and see the boy with the chipped tooth. He works odd jobs at the bakery 2 streets over, always smells faintly of yeast. He holds out a scrap of cloth. "For your mouth," he says. His voice is hoarse. You tie it on without a word. Soon others start doing the same. Scarves, aprons, rags dipped in vinegar, anything to keep the breath of the sick at bay. It doesn't matter whether it works. It just matters that it feels like it might. The cellar has changed. It's no longer a place to sleep, it's a place to wait. You wait for the sickness to pick someone else. You wait for it to leave. You wait for a knock from above with a message, work, food, anything. But the knock never comes. No one wants to enter a place where the fever lives. You make yourself useful. You empty the pail. You mop the floor with old broth water. You help rotate the blankets to the fireside, such as it is. A single coal in the grate, doing its best to impersonate warmth. You don't talk unless someone talks to you first. And even then, voices are quiet now. You save your breath. Literally. That night, you lie down with the cloth still over your face. You tuck your scarf around your head, not for warmth, but to create a barrier between you and the room. The candle you bought earlier still hasn't been used. You can't bring yourself to light it. Something about flame now feels dangerous. Too alive, too hungry. So you sit in the dark. You remember the dead cart bell. You remember the girl who vanished. You remember the sound of coughing from upstairs and realise you haven't heard it in a while. The fever is moving on. Or maybe it's finished with them. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but your chest is tight. Not painful, not yet. Just aware. As if your lungs have become something you need to concentrate on. You listen to them. You time your breath. You make deals with yourself. If I'm still breathing in 10 minutes, I'll sleep. If I wake up coughing, I'll leave. If she gets worse, I'll help. But mostly you think about tomorrow. About how you'll go to the pump and stand in line for water you'll have to boil. About how you'll try to stretch half a crust into something like a meal. About how you'll scrape together the energy to smile at someone. Just once. So they remember you're still here. Because in winters like this, the worst thing isn't the cold or even the fever. It's disappearing quietly, and no one noticing. You wake to the sound of something breaking. It's early, before the light creeps in through the boards. but already your body registers it. A different kind of cold, sharper, hungrier, the kind that doesn't just settle into your bones but starts hollowing them out. The noise came from the corner, a crash, followed by a sharp yelp and a grunt. You sit up, blinking in the dark. It's the older man with the milky eye, Mr. Turner maybe, or just the pipe man, depending who you ask. He's sprawled across the floor, his hands outstretched toward the hearth, or what's left of it. The fire grate is shattered. He'd tried to pull it apart for fuel. No one moves to help him. Not yet. You hear someone whisper, "He's gone mad." Maybe he has. Or maybe he's just colder than everyone else and finally ran out of patience. Either way, the metal is broken, the bricks have collapsed, and the only working heat source in the room is now gone. For a few moments no one speaks. Then a quiet voice from near the stairs. "We'll freeze tonight." No one disagrees. You spend the next hour trying to stack bits of broken furniture into something burnable. An old stool, a loose drawer, a scrap of bed frame that takes 3 people to pry from the corner. Every piece of wood sacrificed feels like tearing a chunk from your future comfort. But there's no other choice. The pile crackles to life, reluctant and smoky. It barely throws heat. But the room shifts around it like moths to a lantern. Even Mr. Turner finds a spot nearby, muttering something about how the grate wasn't working right anyway. No one argues. That's when the dripping starts. It comes from overhead, a slow, rhythmic pat. At first you think someone upstairs has left a pail. Then you realise the ceiling itself is sweating, melting from inside. The frost that built up between the boards has begun to thaw, not because of warmth, but because the cold outside is changing form. It's no longer still and brittle, it's wet, and wet in winter London is far worse than dry, because it soaks you, because it finds its way in. Because once things get wet, they stay wet, and nothing dries without sun. You touch the sleeve of your coat. It's already damp again. You check the ceiling for mould. There's always mould. The boy beside you coughs once sharply and then sniffs. He doesn't wipe his nose, just pulls his scarf tighter and watches the flames. You realise you haven't been outside in 2 days. You need to go outside. Not for fresh air, there isn't any, but for perspective. The walls are starting to press in. The air in the cellar smells of scorched fabric and damp feet. You step out and immediately regret it, because the streets are flooding, not high water, just enough to pool in the gutters and crawl up the edges of your boots. Meltwater. It looks innocent, gentle, even reflective. But it hides the worst thing of all, the slush. That foul mixture of snow, soot, horse dung and ash. It's everywhere. You try to walk around it, but there's no dry ground left. Every step is a risk. Your boots are thin. You feel the chill rising with every squelch. You pass a man hauling a bucket of coal dust, not coal dust, to try and spread over the pavement. He sees you, shrugs and says, "Better than nothing." You nod. He's right. It's always better than nothing. You try to keep moving, partly to stay warm, partly because the street feels cursed, like if you stand in one spot too long, the slush will rise up and pull you under. The fog is lighter today, but not gone. Instead of a wall, it's become a curtain, thick enough to blur faces, thin enough to feel watched. You head toward the baker's, or where the baker's used to be. You haven't seen his window lit in days, the sourdough smell, gone. But sometimes, if you're lucky, his son leaves burnt ends in a tin near the door. First come, first serve, no questions asked. You round the corner and stop. The tin is there, empty. Someone's already beaten you to it. Instead, you crouch beside the wall and wait, pretending to tie your boot. You count breaths, watch boots pass by. Most are like yours, scuffed, wet, and missing laces. Some wear sacks. One woman wears paper tied around her calves. Every face looks downward, until one doesn't. A boy, maybe 10, stares at you. His hair is soaked, his eyes bloodshot. He lifts his hand and offers half a roll. You blink. You can't remember the last time someone gave you anything. You reach for it slowly. But before your fingers meet, a voice cuts in. Oi, that's ours. An older girl, his sister maybe, snatches the roll from his hand, smacks his arm and pulls him back. They disappear around the corner before you can say a word. Gone, like a dream. You stand again and press your palms to your stomach. The ache is dull now. Hunger has turned into something gentler, an echo of itself. That's the worst part. You stop feeling it. And when you stop feeling it, that's when it starts to win. You make your way back toward the cellar, feet dragging, boots squelching. Every step sends a spray of grime up your leg. Your coat is heavy now, weighed down by moisture and soot. And just before you reach your door, you hear it. The scream. It's short, high. A child's voice, one alley over. You pause, you wait. Nothing. You hear it again, then silence. You should go. You don't. You turn the handle and descend into the cellar where the fire has nearly died and someone is tearing pages from an old book to keep it going. You sit down, pull your coat tighter, and pretend not to hear the next cough. But later that night, the scream follows you. Not the sound exactly, but the shape of it, the way it cut through the city like a knife through frost. And as you lie there, you wonder, not for the first time, how many others are shivering in cellars, waiting for spring that might never come. You wonder what London will look like if winter never ends. And for the first time since it all began, you don't picture flowers blooming or warm bricks underfoot. You picture silence. Just silence. No carts, no bells, no coughs, just fog. Forever. The calendar says it's February now. Not that it matters. Time has grown soft around the edges, mushy like the bread if you soak it too long in broth. Each day looks like the one before. Grey skies, wet boots, cracked lips, the smell of cold meat and paraffin. But today brings something different. Today you are asked to do something impossible. The girl in the corner, the one who'd been wheezing for a week, is gone. Not gone as in taken somewhere, but gone as in still. As in, not moving, not breathing. No one says the word, not allowed. And that's the problem, because someone has to move her. The cellar can't afford to become a tomb. You sit there, staring. No one meets your eyes. Even the older ones, those who've seen it before, look away, suddenly fascinated by their own shoes, or the blank wall, or the dust gathering on the last crust of cheese. Finally it's the boy with the chipped tooth who stands. He doesn't say a word, just looks at you. You, specifically, as if to say, "Come on, you're strong enough." Are you? You don't feel strong, but you nod. You walk to the far end, to the place where blankets are always too thin and the light never quite reaches. You kneel down and place your hand on her shoulder, half expecting her to flinch. She doesn't. Her body is strangely light, like most of her has already left. You don't look at her face. You lift her gently. She doesn't weigh more than a sack of laundry. Together you and the boy carry her up the stairs. Each creak feels like a scream. Each breath feels like an apology. The air outside hits you like a wall. Wet, dirty, indifferent. Where do you even take her? There's no official place. Just the old courtyard near the tannery. That's where others have gone. You walk fast. The street is almost empty, save for the man with the dead cart. He gives you a look, curious, not unkind, but doesn't stop. You find the courtyard, pick a corner, and lay her down behind a broken crate. You say nothing. There are no prayers left. You head back. But not before you notice something. Someone's drawn a chalk mark on the cellar door. You pause. It's a crooked X, smudged and hurried. You scrape it off with your sleeve, but you know what it means. Fever here. You hesitate. For a long moment you stand outside, fingers twitching near the door, unsure whether to open it again, whether you should go back in. But where else is there? You step inside. They ask you nothing. They already know. You sit near the fire, such as it is, and stretch your hands out, not because you're cold, but because they're starting to feel numb. Not frostbite, just fading. You close your eyes and whisper something. It's not a prayer, it's a question. How many more? That night the cellar is quieter than usual. No coughing, no murmurs, just the steady crackle of what little fuel remains. The flickering glow turns everyone into shadows, half-formed, hunched and hesitant. No one dares speak above a whisper now, as if loud voices might attract something worse than fever. You sit with your back against the wall, legs pulled to your chest, staring at your boots. The soles are peeling again. There's no point in fixing them. Not while the streets are still rivers of filth and ice. Not while you still have to walk every day just to find food, or some version of it. You reach into your coat pocket. The candle stub is still there. You almost forgot about it. You pull it out, feel its weight in your palm, cold, smooth, and slightly bent from the shape of your body. You think about lighting it, just to watch it burn, just to remind yourself that something in this world still produces light. But you stop, because there's a girl beside you now, barely 12, maybe younger. You don't know her name. She doesn't speak much. She just stares at the candle in your hand like it's the most magical thing she's ever seen. So you offer it to her. She blinks, then nods. She takes it gently, both hands, like she's receiving a gift from the Queen herself. She holds it to her chest and curls up tighter, eyes wide and still. You watch her fall asleep. And for the first time in days, your heart tightens in a different way. Not from cold or hunger, but from something older. Something that whispers, you're still human. You wonder how long that will last. A cough breaks the silence. Not from the girl, from someone older, on the far side. Deep, wet. You hear them shift under their blanket. No one moves to help. Not out of cruelty, but because they can't. There's nothing left to give. The man with the milky eye starts singing again. It's always the same song. Something about rivers and home and warm bread. He sings like he's already somewhere else. And maybe he is. Maybe his mind figured out how to leave first, and his body's just catching up. You drift off at some point, still upright, still in your coat. You dream of fog and fire and snow that falls upward. When you wake, your fingers are stiff. Someone has stolen your scarf in the night. You don't even feel angry. You understand. Outside, it's still dark, but a strange dark. One that feels like morning might come if you wait just a little longer. You listen. The city has a sound in winter that never really stops. Even when everything else goes still, London breathes through the walls. Pipes clank, rats scratch. Distant carriages rattle across cobblestones, their wheels sloshing through yesterday's misery. You stand. Because you have to. Because there's no glory in staying still. You lace your ruined boots one more time. You tie your coat as tight as it'll go. You step over the man who's still humming and past the girl still sleeping with a candle in her hand unlit. And as you climb the cellar stairs one creak at a time, you whisper again, "How many more?" But this time, you mean how many more mornings? How many more chances to try again? Because even in this city of soot and sorrow, winter hasn't won yet. You step outside into a world that doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. It's not raining, but the air is wet. It's not snowing, but the roofs are white. The fog hovers, but doesn't settle. And the sun, if it exists, is buried behind a sky so colourless it could be mistaken for paper soaked in dishwater. Your boots splash into the first puddle before you even finish locking the door behind you. It's going to be one of those days. You start walking. Because when you walk, your blood moves. And when your blood moves, your toes don't freeze. It's a simple trade. Today, you take a different route. Not to find food, not to find work, but to find proof that the world still has an edge to it, that it doesn't go on like this forever. You pass a row of butcher stalls, closed. The awnings sag with ice. One of them has a sign in the window, "Gone to Gravesend." No one has erased it. Why would they? Farther on, you pass the Thames. The smell hits you first. The river doesn't freeze solid. It festers. Every tide leaves behind a new layer of rot. And when it does freeze, it traps the stench beneath a crust so thin it breaks under the weight of a bird. There's a man crouched near the edge with a fishing line, but he isn't catching fish. He's dragging something long and pale and not moving. You don't stay to find out what it is. You turn, because this isn't the proof you came for. You want to see something good, or at least something true. You make your way toward the edge of Covent Garden, where the vegetable stalls used to be. There's nothing left now, just crates, upturned, abandoned, and gnawed on by rats. But then, something catches your eye. Colour, a flash of it. Between two stalls, tucked low, a tiny pile of red. You edge closer. It's a bunch of radishes, real, untouched, bright as blood. You look around. There's no one in sight, just the radishes waiting. You hesitate, not because you don't want them, but because you do. Because you know how this city works. Nothing this beautiful gets left behind without a reason. Still, your stomach answers first. You reach down, fast, snatch the bunch, and pull. And that's when the string tightens. You didn't see it. Thin as a hair, wrapped around the crate leg. You fall backward as the crate tips, then crashes, and suddenly behind it someone moves, a child, not more than 6, dirty, silent, watching you. This is her trap. The radishes were bait. You blink. She doesn't speak, just reaches out, takes the radishes and backs away into the fog. Gone. No anger, no cruelty, just hunger. You sit there on the pavement, stunned, and then, of all things, you laugh. Because somehow, you feel better. Not because you ate, but because she got you. Because if that little girl still has the cunning to set a trap in this frozen city, then maybe, just maybe, the world hasn't run out of cleverness yet. Maybe there's a future. You dust yourself off. Your stomach growls again, but this time it sounds like hope. You wander the city a while longer, not really looking for anything, just being, letting the day unfold however it dares. The air bites your ears, but your mind is elsewhere, caught on that little girl's face, the precision of her trap, the boldness of her silence. You wonder how many other tiny kingdoms are hiding in the cracks of London. Kingdoms run by clever children, scavengers, and fog dwellers. You start to picture them. A boy with mismatched boots guarding a tin of matches, a pair of twins trading warmth under an old theatre stage, a mute girl who draws maps of dry spots in the city by scratching them into bricks with chalk. Maybe the grown-ups have given up, but the kids haven't, and maybe that's the difference. You pass by a newspaper boy. Well, a boy standing where newspapers used to be sold. He isn't yelling headlines. He's selling kindling now. Torn broadsheets, 3 for a penny. His hands are inked from folding them. You nod. He nods. That's all. Farther down the road, you pass a dog curled in a doorway, one eye open, watching, judging, waiting. You drop a crumb of stale bread near its paw. It doesn't move, just sniffs once and returns to dreaming. You start noticing things you hadn't noticed before. A line of laundry, somehow still fluttering between buildings. A cracked window with a vase. A vase, holding 3 withered daisies. A woman sweeping snow from her stoop, humming a lullaby that's older than your memory. These things shouldn't be here, but they are, and that feels important. You cut through an alley you don't usually use and find yourself behind the apothecary's. The back door is ajar. Warm light spills out in a narrow wedge like gold slicing through mud. You hear voices inside. Real conversation. Not begging, not coughing, just talking. You stand still, soaking in the glow. It smells of herbs and vinegar and something close to cinnamon. You don't knock, you don't step inside, you just listen. For 5 whole minutes you let that light wrap around you like a blanket you don't have to steal. And when you finally turn to leave, it's not hunger or cold that follows you. It's that sound. Talking. London hasn't stopped breathing. Not entirely. There are still corners where candles burn. Still people who speak without fear. Still lives being lived in defiance of frost and soot and everything the city throws at them. You walk back slower this time, not to delay the cold, but to honour the warmth. Every boot print feels like a statement. I was here. I am still here. When you reach the cellar, you push the door open carefully. Someone has fixed the hinge. The air inside smells of smoke and something faintly sweet. Someone found sugar beets. The girl with the candle is awake. She holds it up like a torch. Her face is smudged, but her eyes are clear. She says nothing, but she nods. You nod back. You sit. You breathe. You survive. And somewhere, deep in your chest, a tiny ember stirs. Not a fire, but a fight. Because winter hasn't broken you yet, and until it does, you'll keep walking. The last frost is supposed to come soon. That's what the old woman with the glass eye said yesterday. She claimed her bones could feel the earth shifting, just slightly, just enough. You wanted to believe her. You still want to believe her, but this morning the frost is thicker than ever. It climbs the inside of the windows now, curling in delicate whirls like lace made of ice. Your breath clouds in front of your face as you wake, and the tips of your fingers are too stiff to unlace your boots without rubbing them first. Someone has found coal. Only a handful, but it's enough to keep the stove alive for a little longer, enough to make the air less painful, and that's become the new scale of hope. Not good. Just less painful. You move slowly. Everything is slower now. Each motion is deliberate, economized, like a currency you can't afford to spend recklessly. Even laughter costs something. Lungs that are too fragile, cheeks that might split from the cold. There's a whisper that the soup kitchen on Hanbury Street reopened. No one's sure, but the rumour alone is enough to send people shuffling in that direction, shoulders hunched, eyes low. You decide to go. Not because you think they'll have anything left, but because you'd rather walk than sit. You pull your scarf tighter, your new one, sewn from old socks, and head into the morning fog. The streets feel like memory. You've walked them so often that your feet know every cracked flagstone, every place where the gutter overflows, every step where the ice is thinner than it looks. The smells are always the same. Coal smoke, horse dung, spoiled cabbage, wet wool. But today, there's something else. A smell you haven't caught in months. Bread. Fresh bread. You stop. You turn your head. Slowly. Like if you move too fast, the scent will vanish. There, across the street, behind a soot-smudged window, a bakery is open. The shutters are half up. The door cracked just wide enough to see the golden curve of a loaf on a wooden shelf. You cross the street without remembering your feet. Inside, it's warm. Unbelievably warm. Your face stings from the sudden change in temperature and your eyes water even though you're not crying. A woman stands behind the counter, hair pulled back, apron stained with flour. She doesn't smile, but she doesn't scowl either. You hold up your hand. You have 1 penny. Not enough for the good stuff, but enough for the crusts. She nods. She wraps a bundle in paper and hands it to you. Still warm from the oven. You thank her. Out loud. She nods again, more softly this time. Outside, the air hits you like a slap, but your hands are full of heat. You eat the first piece right there on the curb. No butter, no jam, just bread. Plain, warm, real. You close your eyes. You chew slowly. And for a brief moment, you're not cold. You're not tired. You're not a ghost in the gutters of London. You're alive. And spring is coming. You can feel it. Not in the sky. Not in the temperature. But in the way the bread softens against your teeth. In the way someone baked it. Someone shared it. Someone cared enough to light a fire despite the cost. That, more than anything, feels like a beginning. You head back through the market lanes, passing puddles rimmed with slush that look almost harmless, until you step in one and feel the icy truth seep through your boot's sole. But you don't curse this time, because your belly is full. Or, not full, exactly, but warm, and that changes everything. You pass 2 chimney sweeps huddled in a stairwell. They're playing a game with stones and broken chalk, scratching out numbers like they're tallying fortunes instead of just killing time. One of them glances up and sees the crust of bread in your hand, the half you've saved. He doesn't beg, he just looks, so you hand it to him. And just like that, you've done it. You've contributed something to someone else. In this city where most people claw and bite and hunker down, you shared. It's a small thing, a crust, but the boy devours it with the reverence of a feast. You continue walking, and in the distance you hear bells. Not church bells, not clock towers, but sleigh bells. Tiny, high and faint. You pause. No sleighs in this part of the city. No snow smooth enough to ride. But the sound floats anyway, light as a dream. You glance down an alley where a child has tied bits of metal to a stick and is dragging it along the bricks, making his own music. He grins when he sees you. You raise your hand in a slow salute, and he bows with mock grandeur. The city lets you see this today, just for a moment. That night, back in the cellar, the stove burns a little brighter. Someone has brought tallow candles, salvaged from a shuttered chapel. The air smells faintly of wax and smoke, and your cheeks glow as if the warmth is coming from within you now. You sit near the girl with the candle. She still has it, you realise. Still hasn't lit it. It's become something more than a flame now, a symbol. You look around. The coughing hasn't stopped. The damp hasn't lifted. But something else has shifted. The silence isn't so heavy anymore. People are talking, quietly, carefully, remembering things they liked before winter, before the cold swallowed everything. Someone starts humming a song. It isn't sad. You lie back, arms folded beneath your head. And for the first time all season, you don't feel like the cold is winning. It wants to. It still claws at the door, still bites at every gap in the board, still lives in your bones. But it hasn't broken you, because you're still walking, still breathing, still noticing the colour red when it shows up in a pile of grey. And when the frost finally begins to loosen its grip on London, when the first daffodil slices through frozen soil like a miracle in yellow, you'll be there, not just to see it, but to feel it, because you survived, and winter did not. So now, as the fog settles low and the coals in your mind turn to embers, you drift beneath a blanket heavier than anything you've worn all day, but softer too. The noise of the city recedes, the rattling carts, the dripping eaves, the coughing echo behind cellar doors. What stays is the hush, the kind that only comes after enduring something long and cold and endless. You remember the bread, the steam rising from it like a whisper. You remember the girl's unlit candle and the way it glowed anyway, just by being held. You remember how laughter felt sharp at first, like a splinter in your ribs, but slowly melted into something warm. And now you feel it again, just under the skin, that small stubborn flicker. Hope, not the loud kind, not the marching band or the speech from the rooftop kind, the quiet kind, the kind that survives deep winters and deeper cellars, the kind that waits patiently through slush and soot, through ice-thick boots and frozen milk pails until it can unfurl, one petal at a time, in a patch of stubborn soil somewhere between Hanbury Street and the old bakery. That hope belongs to you now. Tuck it under your pillow. Let it glow a little, even with your eyes closed, because the city is quiet, and you made it through, and spring, somewhere just beyond the fog, is turning over in its sleep.